Chapter 370. Someone said, "The environment determines one's character, and character determines one's fate." Although Zhang Cheng did not fully agree with the meaning of this sentence, he felt that it was simply appropriate to apply to the banshee. This woman, who had lived in the slums as a child and experienced the hardships of life and the darkest side of human nature, had completely changed from one extreme to another after her ability awakened. Arrogance, madness, willfulness, there seemed to be no fear in her dictionary at all. In less than 10 years, she had angered more than half of the powerful people in New York's underground world. Coupled with her undisguised, licentious private life, no one was willing to form an alliance with her. Of course, all of this was not important now. Because she had lost the right to control her own fate, she was now just a slave, a prisoner bound in an artificial body, a servant who could never disobey her master's orders. Perhaps deep in her subconscious, she still had strong resentment, but she also knew that she had no future to speak of. The so-called hope had been completely shattered the moment her soul was pulled out of her body by Miles. All that was left was endless pain and torment. Glancing back at Patty, who gave off an incomparably lonely feeling in the cab, Zhang Cheng gently adjusted the sunglasses used to cover the demon eyes, pushed open the door, and walked straight to the second floor of the fitness club. He could clearly feel that as he absorbed more and more power and knowledge, his emotional awareness was becoming weaker and weaker. The positive emotions such as sympathy, love, and responsibility that he used to have were gradually disappearing, replaced by a strong sense of purpose that he would do anything to achieve his goals. Things that could cause strong emotional fluctuations in ordinary people, such as the various inspirational stories reported by the media all day long, tragic figures, and so on, could no longer resonate with him. He did not know whether this change was good or bad, but one thing was certain. He would hardly change his original plan because of external factors, and he would not be like the villains in many movies and television works, being persuaded by the protagonist to change his ways. If anyone dared to block his path, there was only one outcome: dying without a burial place. Even their souls would become consumables to summon demons. Maybe this is the legendary price to pay to obtain great power. Zhang Cheng muttered to himself. He finally left the old elevator and came to the second floor of the fitness club. Unlike the first floor, which had a lot of fitness equipment, the second floor was a place to learn aerobics, yoga, and dance. A few young female instructors in sexy tights were leading 20 to 30 students to their respective venues for fitness exercises. He ignored the seductive scene on the other side of the transparent glass and walked quickly to the front desk. He said to a black woman who was more than 8 meters tall and had a body comparable to a professional model, "Good afternoon, madam. Do you know where Fitz is?" "I'm Fitz. May I ask who you are?" The black woman frowned subconsciously, her 2 black eyes revealing the light of scrutiny. "My name is Zhang Cheng. You can just call me Zhang, or Sir Feudal Lord." After saying that, Zhang Cheng took out the badge that represented his identity from his pocket and placed it on the table. At the same time, he also noticed that when they were talking, the young and beautiful female teachers around them were looking at them with vigilant eyes. "Lord? Oh, I see. You're the hot topic recently. I didn't expect that the council would decide to make you the Lord so soon. But it's no wonder. After all, after Councilman Miles died, you're the only young person who showed talent in alchemy." The black woman who called herself Fitz raised the corner of her mouth and showed an interested look. "I'm sorry, madam. My time is very precious. If you don't mind, can you hurry up and complete the handover procedures?" Zhang Cheng urged calmly. Perhaps in the eyes of many Westerners, this mixed-race black woman in front of them was an out-and-out beauty. She had breasts, buttocks, and 2 sexy thick lips. She was simply the best gift from God to man. Unfortunately, she didn't fit the aesthetic standards of the Easterners, especially Zhang Cheng's aesthetic standards. No matter how he looked at her, it felt awkward. Fei Zi undoubtedly sensed the disgust that flashed through her eyes, and his face immediately turned gloomy. He took out a thick notebook from under the counter and threw it on the table. He explained in a bad mood, "Here, everything you want is in here. Remember, Pay the stipulated amount to the council on the 5th of every month. As soon as she finished speaking, she immediately raised her hand and snapped her fingers. All the female teachers who were in class quickly left the students who were looking at each other and followed her out of the fitness club. They didn't even change their clothes. Oomph. Idiots who overestimate themselves. Patty, kill them all. Zhang Cheng sneered. He picked up the phone and gave the order to the banshee sitting in the car. It must be known that the Lord had almost supreme power in his own territory. He didn't need to go through any procedures to decide the life and death of an underground world resident. It was obvious that Fitz had treated him as a mere figurehead. Now, he was going to use Fitz's blood to prove that he was worthy of being a lord. Otherwise, if he didn't respond to the provocation, the underground world residents in the entire area would think that he didn't have the power to rule, and all kinds of terrible evil would emerge. Ha ha ha. It's my pleasure, my dear master. But I'm a little curious. How did Fitz, this stupid woman, offend you? The banshee's seductive voice came through the phone. It's nothing. Maybe my age and attitude made her think that I'm weak and easy to bully. Zhang Qing looked at the account book and casually replied, Weak and easy to bully? Oh my God, this is the funniest joke I've ever heard in my life. Fitz was still as arrogant as ever. She didn't know that she had unintentionally provoked such a terrifying enemy. Give me 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, you will see her withered corpse placed in the church's bell tower opposite the fitness club. Patty gloated as she gave a guarantee. There is nothing that could make her feel happier and more satisfied than brutally killing her former enemy. She threw away the mobile phone in her hand and quickly opened the car door. She stepped on her 10-inch high heels and swaggered into a dark alley under the gaze of countless people. Without a doubt, the banshee who was familiar with the surrounding terrain planned to take a shortcut and block her old enemy in a dead end 2 streets away. According to what she knew, there were no surveillance cameras there and not many ordinary people would pass by. It was the best place to fight. Chapter 371. Damn it. Did you see the way that kid looked at me just now? He actually despised me. Who does he think he is? I swear I'll teach him a lesson if I have the chance. Fitz obviously didn't know that the Grim Reaper was coming for his life as he angrily vented his dissatisfaction to his female companion. As a woman who was used to being praised and fawned on, she never dreamed that she would be despised by the opposite sex one day in her life. Especially the way he looked at her just now. It was as if he was looking at something disgusting and dirty. If it wasn't for the strong deterrence of the Parliament, she might have fallen out with him and raped him before killing him. Don't think that it was rare for a woman to rape a man in this magical land of America. On the contrary, whether it was the underground world where power reigned supreme or the world of ordinary people where capital reigned supreme, similar situations happen from time to time. All right, Fitz, calm down. He's just an ignorant kid who doesn't know anything. He doesn't know how to appreciate a real woman. As for finding trouble with him, forget it. From what I know, although his overlord status was decided by a vote of the New York Parliament on the surface, there's the shadow of the Supreme Council Laffern behind him. A woman with short black hair comforted softly. Narissa is right. You don't have to make a dangerous enemy for yourself. If nothing goes wrong, when you return to the Parliament this time, there's an 80% chance that you'll get the title of Overlord. By then, we won't have to interact with each other. Before the other Latino woman with a headband could finish her sentence, a slender arm reached out from behind and strangled her neck. She didn't even have time to resist before she felt her vitality leaving her body quickly. Her youthful and beautiful face became old as a large number of wrinkles and age spots covered every inch of her skin in the blink of an eye. About half a minute later, she turned from the most beautiful 25-years-old woman into a lifeless corpse. And the initiator of all this casually threw the corpse to the side and greeted while licking his lips. Long time no see, my dear Fitz. Did you miss me? It's you? Aren't you already dead? The black woman widened her eyes and revealed an expression of disbelief. She couldn't understand at all why a former enemy who was declared dead by the Parliament would suddenly appear in front of her. Dead? Ah, I did die once, and I can't be considered alive in my current state. But there is no doubt that I am standing in front of you again. Do you know, I really miss your first boyfriend's performance in bed and his painful screams before he died. Oh, right, what was his name again? White? Henry? I'm sorry. I've played with too many men, so please forgive me. Patty's tongue was as sharp as ever, mercilessly provoking her opponent's most sensitive nerves. Cliff. His name was Cliff. You fucking bitch. There was no doubt that Fitz was infuriated. The silver armband on his arm flashed with a dim light and came to life, turning into two metal pythons that were 6 to 7 meters long and half a meter thick. What was even more frightening was that these pythons could spit out pungent dark green smoke from their mouths. Even an idiot would know that if they inhaled it, they would definitely be poisoned to death. Under her control, the metal python stuck close to the wall and attacked the banshee from the left and right. If it was in the past, Patty would definitely choose to dodge. However, her current body wasn't made of ordinary flesh and blood, but some kind of powerful alchemy creation. Thus, she didn't dodge at all and stretched out her right hand to grab the head of one of the snakes. Although this hand looked small and delicate, the moment it came into contact with the metal snake, it immediately exploded with an unimaginable amount of strength, forcefully swinging the snake up and smashing it towards the other snake. Boom! After a loud sound, the two metal snakes tangled together and crashed into a brick wall not far away. Not only did it smash a big hole in the wall, it also turned Narsha, who couldn't react in time, into a pile of meat paste. Fitz saw this scene, and his pupils suddenly contracted. At the same time, his raging emotions quickly calmed down. My dear, are you afraid? Do you feel that it's unbelievable? I, who have never been good at close combat, easily destroyed the puppet you controlled? That's right. This is the expression. Fear. Tremble. Master will definitely be very satisfied with the frozen expression on your face before you die. The banshee laughed loudly and opened her arms, her eyes filled with madness. Master? Fitz sharply grasped the key word. That's right. Idiot. Use your chimpanzee brain and think about who you offended just now. Patty sneered and mocked. It's him? He ordered you to kill me. Why? Zhang Cheng's last meaningful smile appeared in Fitz's mind as he clenched his fist and asked loudly. Is there need to ask? Of course, it's to challenge the authority of the city lord. Now, he wants to use your blood to prove that he is a qualified ruler of the underground world. The dignity of the city lord cannot be challenged. Have you forgotten? Patty explained as she walked forward gracefully. She already couldn't wait to suck dry the energy stored in the other party's body to satisfy her empty and lonely inner world. She wanted to prove that she was still alive and not a walking corpse. F***. After figuring out the reason for all this, Fitz gritted his teeth and spat out a Marika curse. He tore off the metal ring carved with a fierce tiger on his belt and threw it out forcefully. This metal ring drew a beautiful parabola in the air and became bigger and bigger. When it landed on the ground, it had turned into a prehistoric creature that was 3 meters long with 2 sharp fangs, saber-toothed tiger. But before this saber-toothed tiger could attack, the banshee leaped and stepped on its head to catch up with Fitz, who was trying to escape. At the same time, she opened her mouth and kissed his sexy lips. In an instant, the surging magical energy and life force were continuously absorbed into her body through direct contact. In less than a minute, the latter's eyes gradually lost their light, and he turned into an old and ugly mummy. The snake and saber-toothed tiger that she summoned turned back into 2 bracelets and a tiger-shaped belt buckle because there was no energy to support them. This feeling, it's simply incomparable. Fitz's little cuties. After the main meal, it was time for the delightful dessert. Ha! Accompanied by maniacal laughter, the banshee opened her arms and released her abilities to the maximum. Chapter 372. The founding father of the United States of America, Benjamin Franklin, who had his picture printed on the $100 bill, once said that there were only 2 things in the world that could never be avoided: taxes and death. When Fitz's withered corpse was hung on the top of the church's bell tower, all the underground world residents within the territory jurisdiction came to this nondescript fitness club to pay their respects to the new lord that ruled this area, and, at the same time, they took the initiative to pay this month's taxes. Due to the fact that everyone came out in the blink of an eye, there were hundreds of people lined up at the door. Without a doubt, they were terrified, afraid that they would accidentally annoy Zhang Cheng and become the second chicken that was used to establish his authority. One must know that Fitz was the acting lord appointed by New York's parliament. Although she didn't have the power to kill like a true lord and couldn't use taxes, she still used her powerful strength to suppress this area for many years. But today, this woman and her subordinates' corpses were hung high on the church's bell tower, as lowly as livestock that could be slaughtered. Power. Incomparably powerful power. In the underground world, there was nothing more intuitive than this to show the relationship between people. As long as one was strong enough, they would be respected. As long as one was strong enough, they would be able to obtain power, even if they were a greedy and lecherous idiot. Gazing at the faces filled with awe and fear, Zhang Cheng suddenly laughed without warning. As he laughed, he teased, "It seems that being a lord is much easier than I thought. At least the subjects of my territory are very docile, aren't they?" Docile? Yes. Anyone who sees the corpse of their former ruler being hung in a conspicuous place will immediately become docile. But I'm very curious. How do you plan to deal with these unknown bills? Patty pointed at a few cardboard boxes filled with bundles of dollars behind her and asked. After all, not everyone in the underground world had the ability to earn gold dinars, so the dollar had become an important part of the tax. According to the records in the ledger, there were a total of 6 gangs in this area, and all of them were firmly controlled by ability users. In addition, it was close to the docks, and all kinds of smuggling channels were rampant. Just this point alone would bring in tens of millions of dollars of tax revenue every year. Generally speaking, they would first be sent to a designated investment and financial management company, where professional accountants would be responsible for investing all the black money in stocks and securities markets all over the world through an invisible net, and even roadside chain supermarkets, hotels, and gas stations. Through falsifying accounts, they would pay taxes to the government, thus turning the illegal black money into legal income. At least in the eyes of the U.S. government, any citizen who paid their taxes on time was a good citizen. As for whether the project was completely legal or not, the politicians did not care at all. In addition, a portion of the political contributions in every election came from laundered black money. The donation bundlers who helped the campaign raise funds have been exposed in huge scandals more than once. For example, the notorious Washington K Street super lobbyist Jack Abramoff, the former CEO of the bankrupt energy company Enron, Kenneth Lay, and so on. Although this method of laundering money would lose a portion of it for no reason, it was undoubtedly much better than being monitored by law enforcement all day long. But the trouble now was that the person who used to control these special channels was Fitz, and now she had become a lifeless corpse. Zhang Cheng rubbed his chin and thought for a moment. He quickly picked up the mobile phone and dialed a number. After about a few seconds, a girl's nervous voice came from the phone. "What happened? Why did you take the initiative to call me? Didn't you say a few days ago that you wanted to give you a job? I just happen to have one here. I wonder if you're interested?" Zhang Cheng had a half-smile on his face. "Job? What job?" The girl's voice revealed a strong sense of doubt. "Very simple. It is a very lucrative job. You will know when you come." After that, Zhang Cheng directly hung up the phone and continued to sit on the chair as he watched the residents in the territory come forward one by one to bow and then throw gold dinars or cash into the cardboard box. After the last taxpayer left the fitness club that had a closed sign in awe, Tracy, who was wearing jeans and a black t-shirt, finally rushed over. When she saw the 2 large boxes of cash stacked on the ground, she was instantly stunned. Her mouth was wide open and she didn't know what to say, because less than 40 minutes ago, she was still working hard for the pay of $8 per hour. She even had to endure the little actions of those ugly middle-aged men in order to get a little bit more tips. But now there were tens of thousands of dollars in cash in front of her. They were casually piled up like garbage, as if they were just ordinary daily garbage. The huge gap between the rich and the poor made this young girl suddenly have a strong sense of anger and unwillingness. Why? Why was it that even though they were all humans, some people could possess powerful supernatural powers and easily obtain wealth that they couldn't even dream of? Why do I have to live at the lowest level of society like an ugly duckling, eating junk food rejected by the upper class all day, wearing secondhand clothes from a dollar store? Most importantly, her beloved sister was killed by a monster. She also became prey in the eyes of the devil. As the saying goes, there is no harm without comparison. The strongest driving force for human progress was never poverty and hunger, but the dissatisfaction that came from the bottom of the heart. Zhang Cheng, who had always been observant, undoubtedly saw this precious potential in her. He grabbed a bundle of $100 bills and threw it to the girl, then asked with a playful expression, "Do you like it?" "I like it. Who in the world doesn't like dollars?" Tracy held the $10,000 tightly in her hand, as if it was the most precious thing in her life. "Hee hee, as long as you like it. Listen, the job I gave you is to be in charge of the cash and accounts. No matter what method you use, just turn all the taxes of unknown origin into legal income. While you're at it, check the accounts of these places regularly to make sure they don't do anything in private. Do you understand?" As the last word left his mouth, Zhang Cheng suddenly came in front of the girl and whispered into her ear, "Don't let me down, my dear Tracy. Remember, this is an opportunity and also a trial. If you can do it well, I don't mind giving you some power to protect yourself. But if you fail, I'm sorry, I won't waste too much time and energy on a piece of trash. Please rest assured, Mr. Wizard, I won't let you down." Tracy raised her head and promised without hesitation. Chapter 373. There is no doubt that for a young girl who grew up at the bottom of society and didn't even have a high school diploma, dealing with millions of dollars in cash was far beyond her ability. However, Tracy was smarter than her peers. She didn't rashly contact those unknown money laundering companies. Instead, she first used a small portion of the money to sign herself up for a finance training class. She wanted to learn about finance and accounting from scratch. As for the boxes of cash, they were temporarily locked in the safe in the basement of the fitness club. She believed that she could find a safe channel to launder the money in 2 to 3 months. In the evening, the dim street lights on both sides of the street lit up. The shops on both sides of the street in the center of the territory also lit up with colorful neon lights. At first glance, it was quite beautiful. At the same time, with the arrival of night, all kinds of illegal gangs, pimps, prostitutes, and drug dealers rushed to the streets to make a living for the day. Standing on the top floor of the building where the Mysterious Hills Fitness Club was located, Zhang Cheng admired the surrounding scenery from above. After a while, he smiled without turning his head and said, "Interesting." They actually clearly divided the day and night into 2 completely different periods. During the day, legitimate merchants make money, and at night, it's the world of gangs and criminals. Who was the previous lord of this territory? It was Jacques, master. It is said that before his ability awakened, he worked for the mafia for a period of time, so he was very keen on building an environment where gangs and merchants coexisted peacefully. In fact, because of the strict control of gangs, the security here is much better than other places. Even the police chief of the police station is one of our people. The Pullman bowed with one hand on his chest and explained, "I see. Gangs, smuggling, and 2 antique and weapon shops that sell magic items. No wonder people say that this is the richest territory in Brooklyn." Zhang Cheng nodded thoughtfully and then asked, "Oh right, how's the night recruitment? I've asked someone to find a few targets. This is their information. Please take a look." The Pullman quickly took out a few pieces of A4 printing paper from his briefcase and handed it over. Zhang Cheng took a few glances and touched his chin as he muttered to himself. Bram Chalice, male, suspected to have the bloodline of hell, able to release hot flames in battle, and has high resistance to fire. Urban Best, male, unknown bloodline, super speed, and very good at using cold weapons. Jessie Livermore, female, known as the Lady of Death, unknown bloodline, has the ability to awaken and control the undead. He had to admit that although the information looked simple, it gave him a deeper understanding of the underground world. First of all, the strength of one's ability didn't mean that it could be directly converted into combat power. For example, Jesse Livermore, who could awaken and control the undead, was undoubtedly quite powerful in terms of ability, especially when there were so many dead supernatural creatures in this world. However, she made the wrong choice to develop in the direction of psychic medium, accepting commissions to summon the souls of the dead to earn money. On the other hand, Eben Bast was the complete opposite. Although he only had speed as his advantage, he relied on his well-honed combat skills to turn himself into a killing machine. Many self-confident and powerful fellows fell at the feet of Eben Bast. Among them, there were even 2 European lords who were not very strong. Secondly, becoming a lord didn't mean that one could sit back and relax. Whether it was the North American Parliament, the South American Parliament, or the European Parliament, there were many records of lords being killed. Some of them were killed because they provoked people they shouldn't have, and some were targeted by hunting groups for wealth and treasures. In short, like the world of ordinary people, there are also a group of vicious people in the underground world who didn't hesitate to take risks and kill people at the risk of being wanted by the Parliament. Last but not least, it was not as easy to recruit knights as one imagined. It was impossible for people to apply for a job after hanging up a recruitment notice, especially those who had a certain level of strength. He had to find them one by one and then meet their requirements, just like a headhunting company. After figuring this out, Zhang Cheng threw the information on the table and asked with great interest, "Pullman, tell me, who do you think is the most worthy of being recruited?" Of course, it's Urban Best. As far as I know, he's now living in a small hotel a few streets away, and he's a real battle maniac. I believe that with his personality, he won't refuse to participate in an unprecedented war game. The lawyer gave a high-spirited suggestion. Obviously, he enjoyed his new position very much. From time to time, he would touch the badge on his chest that symbolized his status as a knight. Then what are we waiting for? Let's pay a visit to this interesting guy and see if he's as described in the information, possessing a terrifying speed that can't be seen with the naked eye. Other than that, find a construction team as soon as possible and transform this damn fitness club into a nightclub, a bar, a hotel, a shopping center, a movie theater, whatever, as long as it's not a fitness club. You know, I hate the smell of sweat, no matter if it's from a man or a woman. After saying that, Zhang Cheng stood up and glanced at the warehouse behind him that was filled with all kinds of spare fitness equipment. His face showed undisguised disgust, especially those dirty yoga mats and dancing shoes. It was simply unbearable. He couldn't understand at all who decided to open a fitness club as a disguise for the stronghold. Could it be that this guy was a crazy fitness enthusiast? After all, anyone with a little common sense would understand that the muscles trained by fitness were only good-looking. They couldn't take a beating as well as the thick layer of fat, and their explosive power couldn't compare to the special muscle groups trained by fighting. Moreover, the sweat glands on the bodies of Caucasians and African Americans were extremely developed. It wasn't the simple smell of sweat that East Asians understood, but a kind of nauseating, pungent smell similar to body odor. This was also the reason why deodorants were so popular in Europe and America. Just imagine, when a room full of people emitted the same smell, it would be a terrible torture to the sense of smell. Therefore, he was willing to endure the smell of cigarettes and alcohol and rebuild this place. "Please don't worry, master. Give me a month, and I swear I'll make this place look brand new." The Pullman gave his promise without hesitation. Chapter 374. Romantic Traveler was a small motel with only 12 rooms. Even though it was dirty, messy, and inconspicuous, it still maintained a decent profit. Most of the time, the tenants who stayed here were either street girls who didn't want others to know their true identities, or criminals who were hiding from the police to conduct illegal transactions. In short, they weren't people who would fuss over $30 to $40. In addition, there was an extremely strange guest who lived in the rightmost room on the second floor. He didn't look for women, nor did he interact with the street thugs who sold laundry detergent and tobacco. Other than occasionally going out for a few days or a few weeks, he spent the rest of his time alone in his room. No one knew what he was up to, but seeing that the rent was $100 a day, As the owner, Bart was too lazy to meddle in other people's business. It didn't matter what the other party was up to, even if it was to make a bomb to create big news, as long as it didn't explode in his motel. Just as he was about to open the drawer and deposit all the cash in the bank to end the day, 3 strangers suddenly walked in. The one in the lead was an Asian man wearing a black suit. Judging from the material and leather shoes, the price was definitely at least a few $1,000s. It wasn't something that the poor people living nearby could afford. In addition, the breathtakingly beautiful woman following behind him also made old Bart's heartbeat faster. His mouth was extremely thirsty, and his lower body had already set up a small tent. As the owner of a motel, he had seen hundreds of beautiful women in his life, if not thousands, but none of them could be compared to this woman. Especially those eyes. It was as if one couldn't help but sink into them and be unable to extricate themselves. As for the last, slightly plump middle-aged man, even if he was a dozen meters away, he could still smell the stench of a lawyer coming from him. Although Americans couldn't live without lawyers, there weren't many people who really liked them. Especially for the poor who didn't have a high income, a single legal consultation could cost them hundreds to thousands of dollars. Many poor people would rather deal with demons from hell than with lawyers. Obviously, these 3 intruders were none other than Zhang Cheng, the Pullman, and Patty who had passed through a few blocks. "Gentlemen, are you looking for lodging?" Old Bart calmed down a little and took the initiative to ask. Even though he didn't think the 3 strangers in front of him would be interested in the meager amount of cash in the drawer, for safety's sake, he reached under the counter and grabbed a shotgun that was taped in place. It was a completely different world in Brooklyn at night compared to during the day. Almost every night, there would be at least 20 to 25 cases of burglary and theft. There were so many robberies that the police couldn't be bothered to deal with them as long as no one died. Zhang Cheng, who had always been good at observing, noticed the tightened right arm of the hotel owner. He smiled and replied in standard American English, "No, sir, we are not here to stay. We are here to look for someone." "Looking for someone?" Old Bart frowned subconsciously. "Yes, the urban best should be staying here, right? If you don't mind, can you tell me which room he's staying in?" Zhang Cheng straightforwardly expressed his intentions. At the same time, he took out a bulging envelope from his pocket and threw it in front of him. Old Bart seemed to have understood something. He immediately opened the envelope and took a look. He found a thick stack of $100 bills inside, at least 4 to 5,000. Without any hesitation, he took a bunch of keys from the shelf behind him and said expressionlessly, "The room on the far right of the 2nd floor is the one. Here are the keys to all the rooms in the hotel. I'm going to the bank next. No matter what you're going to do, I don't know and I didn't see." As the last word left his mouth, he quickly ran toward a Ford pickup truck parked outside. When he passed by Patty, he didn't forget to take a deep breath. His face was full of intoxication. Watching the car slowly disappear at the end of the road, Zhang Cheng couldn't help but smile and shake his head. He sighed, "What a smart person. Looks like there's no need to modify his memory. One annoying bug. How about I chase after him and suck him dry?" Patty suggested with a dangerous light in her eyes. "Forget it. You should know that it's not his fault. Pullman, take the keys. Let's go to the 2nd floor." Zhang Cheng glanced at the other party's slightly revealing outfit and walked toward the stairs without batting an eyelid. He was very clear that the hotel owner's wretched actions were completely due to his biological instincts. It was the natural charm of a naked banshee that unconsciously emitted. In fact, any man with a normal biological orientation would subconsciously treat Patty as the object of their sexual fantasies and desire to get close to her. Under Zhang Cheng's lead, the 3 of them quickly arrived at the door of the room with the number 204 sign. Just as the Pullman took out the key and was about to lock the door, he suddenly felt an inexplicable killing intent. He quickly kicked the door open and at the same time raised his ice armor. The next second bang, the door was knocked open by a huge force. A cold light followed closely behind and fiercely pierced into the bone-chilling ice. In an instant, ice shards flew everywhere. The sharp dagger almost pierced through the ice armor's defense. He could even clearly see the tip of the dagger that was just inches away from him. "Magic! The man who launched the attack from inside the room had a shocked expression on his face. However, although he was shocked, his hands didn't stop moving at all. In just a few seconds, he had stabbed dozens or even hundreds of times at an unbelievable speed from different angles. The angle of each stab was so tricky. When the ice armor finally shattered under the repeated attacks, the corners of his mouth curled up, revealing a smile that was unknown whether it was excitement or joy. His entire body turned into a blur and disappeared from the spot. "Be careful!" Borman, who was in a sorry state, immediately shouted a warning when he saw this scene. However, the moment this word left his mouth, Zhang Cheng, who had been passively defending all this time, suddenly smiled. He raised his hand and lightly snapped his fingers. "Ha!" An invisible arcane rune appeared, emitting a dazzling radiance. Before the other two could react, the man who had disappeared a second ago suddenly crashed into the glowing rune, shooting out golden sparks. The dagger in his hand was an abnormal red, as if it had been heated by a flame of over 1,000 degrees. Moreover, it was rapidly melting, and the hand holding the hilt was severely burned. Even so, he didn't seem to have any intention of throwing away his weapon. It seemed that he wanted to destroy the arcane rune in one go. Zhang Cheng could feel the fanaticism hidden under the man's calm appearance. He calmly greeted him with a smile. "Good evening, Mr. Urban Best. It seems that you are exactly the same as what was written in the information. You are a battle maniac through and through. Unfortunately, you chose the wrong opponent today." Chapter 375. Damn it, this guy is a lunatic. The Pullman gritted his teeth as he struggled to get up from the ground. He had always thought that the rumor that Urban Best would attack people for no reason, and even kill people who came looking for him, was an exaggeration. Apart from a lunatic who would kill people for fun. But today, the Pullman finally understood that this was not a F***king rumor, but an ironclad fact. One had to know that if Zhang Cheng hadn't discovered the attack in advance, he would have been a cold corpse by now. The other party did not care about the knight's badge on his chest, nor did he care if he would be wanted for revenge after killing someone. Now, he finally understood that without strength, even if he obtained the title of a knight, he would only be able to intimidate the underworld minions. Someone like Eben Bastion, who dared to kill a lord, was no different from a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Idiot! Seeing the Pullman retreat to the entrance of the building, Patty's face showed a disdainful expression. She immediately lifted her slender legs and took a step forward, blocking the passage to the second floor with Zhang Cheng. "Oh, beautiful lady, do you also intend to join in this interesting game?" Urban Best turned his head and asked with a smile that was not a smile. "Join? You really think highly of yourself. No, I only want to prevent you from escaping. In addition, you should start praying that you did not provoke that guy, or else I guarantee that death is not the most terrifying outcome." After saying this, Patty crossed her arms and leaned against the wall behind her, no longer making any threatening moves. "Escape? I will escape? Ha ha ha!" Urban Best seemed to have heard a funny joke and laughed out loud without warning. Although his palms were severely burned, his mental state was still in a state of excitement. After about 2 to 3 seconds, he pulled out 2 sharp bronze daggers from the outside of his leather boots. Unlike the short sword from before, these 2 daggers not only flickered with a strange light, but they were also engraved with ancient Sumerian cuneiform words. Many parts of the daggers were still covered in green rust. It was obvious that they were relics excavated from ancient ruins or tombs. "Oh, ancient magic weapon." Zhang Cheng's eyes flashed with amazement. After all, in the known history of human civilization in the ordinary world, the cuneiform script invented by the Sumerians was the oldest hieroglyphic writing system. It was born more than 3,500 years ago and had a long history of more than 5,500 years. Perhaps most people would think that this ancient cuneiform script was worthless except for helping archaeologists decipher some stone tablets. But in fact, it was a remnant of the prehistoric super magic civilization. It was something that was born after combining with modern humans. Not only was it a writing system, it also contained powerful magic power. This power was later absorbed by Babylon, Egypt, and Greece. Every time it was absorbed and changed, it would be weakened. By the time of the Roman Empire, too much of the Latin language had been lost. Even the inheritance had been cut off. Therefore, every magic item created with cuneiform was a unique treasure. Zhang Cheng couldn't understand how a lone wolf like Urban Best could have two bronze daggers that were almost identical. That's right. You know your stuff very well. These are the spoils of war I got after risking my life to kill two lords in Budapest. The one in my left hand has the ability to suck blood. Anyone who is stabbed by it will have a certain percentage of their life force extracted to replenish the wielder. The one in my right hand can turn my body into nothingness. So please be careful. Don't let me kill you easily. Urban Best reminded him excitedly. Sounds interesting, but I'm a little doubtful that the two antiques in your hands can withstand an intense collision. As he spoke, Zhang Cheng reached into the magic waist bag hidden in the pocket of his suit jacket and pulled out a translucent blue magic longsword. The moment Moray's spellbreaker appeared out of thin air, Urban Best's pupil shrank. An abnormal blush appeared on his face. It was as if he had seen his true love at first sight. After a full minute, he asked while breathing heavily, "It's so beautiful." She was her name. Moray's spellbreaker. Please note that this is an anti-magic weapon. It has a certain destructive effect on all magic defenses, weapons, and equipment. I'm not sure if your daggers can withstand its impact. Zhang Cheng didn't have the slightest intention of hiding anything. He openly told Urban Best about the characteristics of the longsword in his hand. He. No matter. If I can die under its deadly blade, it's also a blessing. Urban Best bowed with one hand on his chest, as if he was possessed. His whole body turned into a shadow as he pounced forward. As recorded in the data, his speed was completely beyond the limits of what the human eye could capture. Especially when the distance was very close, he could launch several attacks in less than a second. If it were a normal soldier, they wouldn't even have time to pull the trigger. They would be killed in the blink of an eye. But Zhang Cheng was different. Not only was he a powerful mage and warlock, he was also a dark guardian with a high level. Coupled with a large number of defensive and triggering arcane runes surrounding his body, no matter how fast Urban Best attacked, he couldn't cause the slightest bit of damage in the end. There were a few times when he would have been stabbed in the heart by the sharp blade that could refract light, and died on the spot if he hadn't transformed himself into an intangible state. But even so, he wasn't much better off now. The two precious ancient magic weapons not only had more than a dozen cuts of various sizes, but there was also a very deep cut on his waist. Fresh blood dyed his clothes and pants red in the blink of an eye. No matter what, the spellbreaker was made of a stronger magical metal, while the two daggers were made of brittle and soft bronze. There was a fundamental difference in terms of materials. As for the cut on his waist, it was more unfortunate. When he turned into an intangible state to dodge the attack, it just so happened to trigger the anti-magic attribute. As a result, his intangible state instantly turned into a solid state, and he was hit squarely by the sword. Feeling the insurmountable gap between the two of them, Urban Best finally gave up the idea of continuing the battle. He smiled bitterly and sighed. All right, I admit that I'm not your opponent. As the price for provoking you, I'm willing to accept your invitation and become a knight that follows by your side. With the last word, he knelt on one knee and performed a standard medieval etiquette. Oh, you know who I am? Zhang Cheng raised his eyebrows in surprise. Chapter 376. If that's the case, everything you did just now was to test me? Gazing at Urban Best, who was half kneeling in front of him, Zhang Cheng revealed an interested smile. As a person who had experienced several assassinations and fierce battles, he did not feel any killing intent from the other party. Therefore, he did not release any real offensive spells from the beginning to the end. Instead, he chose to fight with a sword, which was not very convenient for him. It had to be said that Urban Best indeed had the right to be arrogant. Whether it was his speed that exceeded the limits of the physical body or his master-level swordsmanship that was fused with who knows how many types of combat techniques. These were all extremely rare in the underground world. After all, although most of the lords were very powerful, their abilities were very simple. They were far from Zhang Cheng's diverse and perfect magical defense system that was like a tortoise shell. Thus, if one was not careful, one would suffer a crushing defeat under the storm of attacks, or even be killed on the spot. It was no wonder that a few hours ago, the Pullman did not hesitate to pick Urban Best out of the few candidates and felt that he was the most worthy person to be recruited. Yes, in fact, other than you, I have already killed 6 people who tried to recruit me. Their corpses are still in the room. Urban Best completely ignored the side of his waist that was still bleeding incessantly. He turned around and looked into the room. Following the direction of his eyes, Zhang Cheng saw 6 corpses neatly arranged in the living room. Without exception, they were all killed by piercing through the heart. The oldest was around 50 to 60 years old, while the youngest was around 20 years old. Among them, 2 were black, 3 were Latino, and only 1 was white in the true sense. Of course, if it were just a few corpses, it would not be a big deal. After all, the underground world was an extremely dark, cruel, and cold-blooded place. Every day, there would be people who died mysteriously. What was really worth noting was that these corpses, without exception, were all wearing badges with a capital letter K on them. In other words, those who were killed were not errand boys, but genuine knights. The capital letter K was actually the abbreviation of the English word knight. The strength of the knights was often uneven. The weakest was like a Pullman who had no combat ability at all. The strongest could even be compared to the members of the secondary parliament. But no matter what, knights were the cornerstones of the ruling structure of the parliament. It was normal to have 1 or 2 fake knights, but it was impossible for 6 fake knights to appear all at once. Zhang Cheng could not understand why the man in front of him was so crazy. Even if he was not afraid of the revenge of the lord that the knight was loyal to, shouldn't he at least consider the reaction of the council? He was now wanted by the European Parliament and the South American Parliament. If he was also wanted by the North American Parliament, he could only escape to the chaotic continent of Australia or Southeast Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. Urban Best seemed to have noticed this. He chuckled and said, "I believe you must be wondering why I would do such a dangerous thing, right? I'm indeed a little curious. What benefits can you get from killing these knights? Is it just to satisfy your inner desire to kill?" Zhang Cheng walked into the house. He checked the condition of the corpses and asked without turning his head. "No, the reason I kill them is very simple. That is to let the lords who are hiding behind the scenes understand that those who do not have the courage to talk to me face to face are not qualified to receive my loyalty. But you're different. Not only did you come in person, but you also showed your overwhelming strength. If I'm not wrong, you're not best at swordsmanship at all, but mysterious magic, right?" After saying that, Eben Best stared at the flickering light in his opponent's left hand, his eyes shining brightly. As early as a few minutes ago, he had already discovered this spell that was ready to be completed. However, he could not break the magical defense even after using all his strength, so he could not see the true power of the spell. "Ha ha, your observation is very sharp. Not bad. I'm a spellcaster. Swordsmanship is just for fun. Here, drink it. From today onwards, you are my knight." Zhang Cheng laughed and threw a bottle of healing potion and a badge to him. The latter did not hesitate at all. He opened the stopper and drank the red liquid in one gulp. In the blink of an eye, the bleeding wound on the side of his waist began to heal rapidly. In less than a minute, it had already formed a scar. He gently stroked the hard brown lump formed by the coagulation of platelets and fibrin. He immediately exclaimed, "Incredible! So this is the magic potion that made the entire New York underground world go crazy recently. I now have no doubt that you will have a bright future, Sir Lord. All right, enough with the compliments. Since you're already my knight, I need you to do something for me." "Oh, what is it? Please tell me." Urban Best was stunned for a moment. Then he bent down and pretended to listen. He undoubtedly did not expect that he would gain a certain degree of trust when he just joined. Zhang Cheng calmly took out the information of the other recruitment targets from the Pullman's briefcase and gave it to him. He straightforwardly ordered, "Go and meet these guys. Tell them that they can either pledge their loyalty to me or die." It's a very simple choice. If they refuse, Urban Best seemed to have realized something. The corner of his mouth slightly raised, showing a bloodthirsty expression. That is to kill them. At this critical moment, I don't want to increase the strength of potential enemies. Also, to help you complete the mission better, I have decided to lend you more Spellbreaker. With the last word, Zhang Cheng loosened his grip on the hilt of the sword and let the sharp magic sword slide from his palm. With a thud, the magic sword stabbed into the hard cement. Because it was too sharp, the tip of the sword was stabbed 3 fingers deep into the ground. Are you kidding me? Urban Best's arm began to tremble slightly, and even his breathing became rapid. No, I never joke about this kind of thing. Please remember, Mr. Urban, I am a generous person. I don't mind sharing wealth and power with my men. But I'm also a harsh person. I will not tolerate cowardice and betrayal. Go to work. After all, you have tested me. Now it's my turn to test you. Zhang Cheng took off his sunglasses and warned him with a demonic eye that flashed with evil light. Urban Best dared to swear that he had never seen such a terrifying eye in his life. It was as if his entire soul was surrounded by a bone-piercing chill. Chapter 377. Although the short battle did not cause too much damage to the small motel, Zhang Cheng still ordered the Pullman to erase the memories of all the tenants, and at the same time let the cleaners clean up the scene, especially the bodies of the 6 knights, which were directly burned on the spot by Hao Ren's demonic flame. Not even a bone was left. After all was done, he took the car back to his so-called home, ready to take a shower, eat something, and then go into the basement to continue his research. However, as the saying goes, plans can never keep up with changes. When the car slowly passed through the gate, he suddenly found that the villa's living room, which should have been empty, was lit up. At this time, Tracy should still be in class. The little girl who lived in the villa before, Elfrida, should have been picked up by Francis, and Patty should be driving. Zhang Cheng could not think of anyone who would visit him at this time. And there was no sign of the door lock being broken at all, which meant that the person either had a superb lock-picking ability or had a matching key. The half-naked banshee saw the vigilance in his eyes through the rear-view mirror. She licked her lips and asked with a smile, "Do you need me to go in and clean up the threat first?" No, I think I know who is in the living room." Zhang Cheng seemed to have thought of something. He opened the door and strode into the villa. Just as he passed through the foyer, and before he had time to take off his suit jacket, an Asian woman in her 40s or 50s suddenly stood up from the sofa and asked with a displeased face, "Where have you been all this time? Why didn't you call me since you were back? And I heard that you broke up with Margie. Come on, Mom. Can't you see that I am tired after a busy day? Can't you wait for me to change my clothes first?" Zhang Cheng pretended to blink and complained. Obviously, this woman was none other than his imposter mother, a typical third-generation immigrant, and also a strong woman with a net worth of more than $600 million. Zhang Ji. That's right. The unlucky guy who died in an accident took his mother's surname. As for his father, he had already chosen to divorce under the pressure of his wife. No man would bear to let his own son take his mother's surname. But fortunately, the mother never showed her strong side to her only son. Instead, she spoiled him to the extreme. Otherwise, this guy with the same name would not have tens of millions of dollars at such a young age. Don't give me that. Answer my question first. Zhang Ji crossed her arms and blocked the stairs to the master bedroom on the 2nd floor. Seeing that the other party did not give him a chance to escape, Zhang Cheng could only raise his hands and make a gesture of surrender. "Okay, I will answer. First, I went to Brazil some time ago and talked with a friend about an investment partnership. I just came back not long ago, and I did not have time to call you. As for Maggie, I can only say that the two of us are not suitable for each other. Let's talk about it and part ways." Investment partnership? The strong mother narrowed her eyes and looked up and down at her son. Obviously, in her impression, Zhang Cheng was not investment material at all. Although he did not lose money after several attempts, He also did not make much money. Later, he gradually gave up on developing in this area. Nothing, it's about technology. I plan to open a biological research institute. He can provide some very promising technology and research directions. Zhang Cheng lied without blinking his eyes. You're not being cheated, right? If there's really good technology, someone would have already invested in it. How could it be your turn? Zhang Ji sat back on the sofa and rolled her eyes. No, Mom. On the contrary, his technology is really good. Look, I just happen to have some samples here. You can take them to the lab for testing. With that, Zhang Cheng stepped to the upper left corner of the living room, took an inconspicuous small box from the cabinet, and gently placed it on the table. Although the strong mother did not think that there would be anything good in the box, she still subconsciously opened the lid. Instantly, small white flowers that had been dried came into her sight. What is this? Wildflowers picked by the roadside? Zhang Ji curled her lips in disdain. Of course not. It is called mind-concentrating flower. Not only can it relax the brain, but can also effectively relieve fatigue, help people sleep, and reduce the degree of depression, Zhang Cheng said, while taking out a few flowers and throwing them into the teapot. He then poured hot water into the teapot. About 2 or 3 minutes later, a wisp of green fragrance echoed in the living room along with the steam. He did not explain too much. He directly poured a small cup for his mom, sitting on the sofa, and then made a pleased gesture. The latter hesitated for a moment, and finally picked up the cup and carefully took a sip. As the hot brown liquid entered her stomach and intestines, Zhang Ji immediately felt that every pore on her body was expanding. It was as if there was a magical force calming the irritated emotions in her mind. After a full 10 minutes, she finished the drink in the cup. She then raised her head and asked in a very serious tone, "Are you sure it is not a type of drug? Regarding this, you could take it back to the company's laboratory for testing. I swear that there are absolutely no traces of narcotics in it." Zhang Cheng gave a guarantee without hesitation. In fact, in Azeroth, many mages and priests would use peace bloom, silverleaf, golden thorn, and other low-level herbs to make a special brew. Not only would it cause harm to the body, but it would also make the user more focused. If it was not for his lack of interest in the world of ordinary people, he could easily become a billionaire just by growing low-level herbs on a large scale and making all kinds of medicine and health products. However, his lack of interest did not mean that his mother in name was not interested. As the boss of a medium-sized beauty and health company, Zhang Ji realized the huge commercial value of this inconspicuous white flower from the first sip. In a modern society where information technology was advancing day by day, what was the most important thing to people? Without a doubt, it was beauty and health. This was especially true for the elites of high society, who often stayed up late due to work pressure. Many of them suffered from insomnia and mild depression. They could only rely on sleeping pills every day to fall asleep. If there was something that could calm them down, even if it was the same price as gold, they would buy it without hesitation. Chapter 378. One should never underestimate a woman, especially an ambitious career woman. After less than 8 hours of short sleep, Zhang Cheng was woken up by his mother early the next morning. After a simple cleaning, he was stuffed into the car without having time to eat breakfast and went straight to the company headquarters in the Manhattan Business Center. In less than half an hour, he listlessly went into his own office. The domineering mother couldn't wait to take the dried peace bloom to the laboratory upstairs for the relevant tests. It had to be said that the Pullman's ability to modify other people's memories was indeed quite impressive. There were hundreds of people in the entire company, but no one realized that he was an imposter. Even the photos placed in the office were wiped clean. Just as Zhang Cheng stood in front of the window and admired the busy scene outside, the office door was suddenly pushed open, followed by a familiar voice in his ear. "Good morning, sir. This is your breakfast and coffee." A beautiful woman in a business suit put a steaming hot food on the table. She was none other than his ex-girlfriend, Maggie, who had broken up with him not long ago. It had to be said that the person Zhang Cheng impersonated was a winner in life. Not only was he an enviable rich third generation, but he was also a bastard who had nothing to do with his secretary, and when he had something to do, his secretary would do it for him. Looking at the woman standing at the door with a slightly haggard face and extremely complicated emotions in her eyes, he deliberately responded with an indifferent look, "Thank you. Just leave it there." "Okay. In addition, the boss just told me to inform you to go to the laboratory immediately after breakfast." Seeing that the man in front of her had no intention of continuing their old relationship, Maggie immediately forced herself to be calm and spoke in a completely businesslike tone. "Got it." Zhang Cheng nodded without thinking. "Have a good meal." With the last word, Maggie turned and left the office, at the same time slamming the door, making a loud noise. The busy employees around were obviously shocked, but when they found the source of the noise, they quickly lowered their heads and pretended not to see anything. The workplace had always been a place where secrets could not be hidden, especially the intimate relationship between the future boss and the beautiful female secretary, which had always been the subject of many people's gossip. Especially after the news of their breakup spread, some people gloated, some felt pity, and some thought that their chance had come. In short, in this capitalistic world where money was paramount, the rich were the rule makers, participants, and final judges of the game of capital. Anyone who tried to break it would be mercilessly obliterated. Even the president was no exception. At least, among the presidents of the United States that Zhang Cheng knew, several had tried to overthrow the Federal Reserve and regain the right to issue currency. As a result, they were inexplicably assassinated. For example, Abraham Lincoln, who signed the Proclamation of Abolition of Slavery, and John F. Kennedy, who was known as the last president who was considerate of the people. Of course, all of this had nothing to do with him. Even if a nuclear war broke out and the world entered a wasteland mode, he had enough power to ensure that he could survive and continue to study the secrets hidden behind the World Cup. However, with the terrifying power of the Senate, everything would return to peace before a nuclear war broke out, just like the two superpowers, the Soviet Union and the United States, who almost had a conflict during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Perhaps ordinary people would think that it was the result of a political compromise, but the truth was that the Senate had sent two people to the highest decision-making level on both sides. They had suppressed the threat of a nuclear war in an extremely subtle way. The ruling class at the top of the power pyramid would never know that in the eyes of the underground world's residents, they were just a group of arrogant and pitiful creatures. Without the protection of the Senate, they would be enslaved by invaders from heaven and hell at any time. Just as Zhang Cheng was relaxing and experiencing the life of an ordinary person, far away in an inconspicuous old house in Queens, Urban Best was staring at a woman in a white nightgown. After a while, he said, "Jesse Livermore, I've given you 4 hours to consider. Now, it's time to tell me your choice. If my answer is no, what will you do?" The woman called Jesse Livermore carefully probed. "Very simple. I'll kill you and hang your corpse in the most obvious place to let everyone know what will happen if you refuse the feudal lord's invitation. After all, in a state of war, a few deaths are nothing to be surprised about." As he spoke, Urban Best slowly pulled out the blue, translucent spellbreaker. His movements were so gentle that it was as if he was not holding a sword in his hand, but his lover. Jesse undoubtedly sensed the terrifying power hidden under the beautiful appearance of the longsword. She immediately stopped what she was doing and shrugged with a bitter smile. "Damn it, it seems that I don't have the right to refuse, right? Besides, I'm still young. I don't want to die at all. A wise choice. Now change your clothes. I'm going to visit Bram Chalice next. Your ability will come in handy." Urban nodded with satisfaction and quickly sheathed his longsword. Even though he wanted to use her to test the might of his powerful weapon, considering that his mission was to recruit people, he suppressed the urge to kill for the time being. There were still a few people on the list anyway. There would always be a few ignorant fellows. There was no need to be too anxious. After a few minutes, Jesse Livermore put on a sexy black dress and carried a strangely large suitcase. The skull pendant hanging on the handle of the suitcase was an illusion that sent chills down one's spine. "What's in the suitcase?" Urban Best looked up and asked curiously. "Please believe me, you don't want to know." Jessie curled her lips into a half-smile and lightly patted the suitcase. In an instant, a black mist emerged from the gaps of the suitcase and revolved around her body. In less than 10 seconds, it disappeared without a trace. If the flowers in the vase hadn't withered completely, everyone would have thought that it was an illusion. An evil spirit? Interesting. Looks like you're not as useless as the rumors say. Arabin's eyes flashed with a glint. Jessie rolled her eyes in annoyance. Huh. Do you think that if I'm really useless, I would be able to live peacefully until now? Also, from what I know, Bram is a hot-tempered fellow. You better be prepared. I don't want to be on the headlines tomorrow. Chapter 379. Damn it. I hate cheese sauce, I hate guacamole, and I hate burritos. Zhang Cheng complained in a low voice as he threw his breakfast into the trash can. He then went into the research and development laboratory on the 20th floor of the building. Although he had tasted a lot of dark cuisine in Azeroth and Song of Ice and Fire, such as roasted spider legs, pigeon pie, and thick soup made with potatoes, crumbled bread, and cheese cream, etc., especially the last one, he only took a small sip and almost threw up the last night's meal. Perhaps it was a difference in personal habits and food culture. Anyway, until now, he could not stand the taste of cheese, butter, salad dressing, and all kinds of strange jam. This was completely different from his identity as an imposter. The unlucky guy who died was completely integrated into American society, whether it was eating habits or values, so the breakfast that Maggie bought did not have any taste adjustments. Zhang Cheng finished the bitter coffee in the cup in one gulp and slightly comforted his empty stomach. He then walked to the side of the test bench that was filled with a large number of instruments and asked with great interest, "How is it? Are the test results out?" "Nonsense. Why else do you think I called you up?" "Camilla, tell him the specific data." Zhang Ji ordered a woman who was no more than 6 meters tall and wearing thick glasses not far away. Hearing the boss's words, the latter hurriedly put down the work in her hand, picked up a small bottle of brown, translucent liquid, and ran over. She said in an excited tone, "Good morning, sir. I have to say, after repeated tests, the flowers you brought are almost confirmed to be a magical plant that is yet to be discovered. I found 2 interesting things inside it. One is an alkali compound, which can stimulate the biological brain to produce nerve conduction signals, allowing a person to quickly recover from intense emotions such as excitement, pain, and sadness. The other is a plant protein, which can repair damaged cells to a certain extent." The woman, named Camilla, seemed to have fallen into a state of madness. She talked endlessly about the results of her experiments, as if a little peace bloom could change the world. However, before she finished reading a series of data, Zhang Cheng pretended to be impatient and interrupted, "Stop. Don't talk about the useless content. Just tell me its commercial value." Simply put, alkali compounds are currently the only thing that can alleviate insomnia and depression at the root. As long as we make some adjustments, we can put them into the market, crush all competitors, and monopolize the huge consumer market. In addition, vegetable protein also has a very broad development prospects. Not only can it be used as the best hemostatic agent and recovery medicine after shell surgery, it is also a natural skincare product, especially in terms of removing wrinkles, color spots, scars, and slowing down the aging and sagging of the skin. Camilla gave the answer without hesitation. As a top student who graduated from Harvard, she was well aware of the value of the dried flowers in the box. As long as she got the seeds and cultivation method, the stock price of this medium-sized beauty and healthcare company would immediately skyrocket, and the small amount of original shares she held would increase by dozens or even hundreds of times. More importantly, participating in the research of such a brand-new plant would not only greatly improve her reputation, but also her status in the academic community. Money, wealth, reputation, everything that ordinary people yearn for was placed in front of Camilla. As the saying goes, opportunities are always given to those who are prepared. What she had to do now was to firmly grasp the opportunity. Zhang Ji meaningfully glanced at the strong desire of the lead researcher in the laboratory. She raised her head and stared into her cheap son's eyes. "Now do you understand the importance of this? I don't care what method you use, but I want you to deal with your partner in 48 hours. Remember, You must get the full set of technology, even if the other party's price is higher. If necessary, I can apply for a commercial loan from the bank. Sorry, I'm afraid I can't meet your requirements. Zhang Cheng smiled and shook his head. What a joke. She was not his real mother. To be precise, he did not see her as family at all. She was just a prop to hide his identity and a smoke bomb to release to potential enemies. How could he easily reveal his secret? Peace bloom flowers were as common as weeds in Azeroth, and you could easily find them in the wild. However, on Earth, they could only grow normally by relying on the energy emitted by the well water in the basement. If they wanted to grow it on a large scale, they would need to use at least 1/3 to half of the weekly output of the well water. In this way, a lot of important experiments would be forced to be delayed, so it was reasonable to refuse. What do you mean? The domineering mother subconsciously frowned. What I mean is what I mean. Do you remember that I mentioned that we were planning to build a biological laboratory together? In a way, this plant is one of the laboratory's assets. Therefore, if you want to use it to make money or develop medicine and health products, you must obtain authorization through a normal business contract. Otherwise, I'm not sure if he will take you to court. Zhang Cheng explained in a deliberately mystifying manner. You sign a contract? Zhang Zi's face suddenly became ugly. That's right. I'll provide the money, he'll provide the technology, and we each have 50% of the laboratory's shares. How is it? My investment this time is not bad, right? After saying that, Zhang Cheng pretended to be proud. Can you contact him now? I want to meet him immediately to discuss the details of the cooperation. Also, don't forget, you're my son. Everything I have will be inherited by you sooner or later. However, whether you inherit a huge business empire or a medium-sized ordinary company depends on your performance this time. After saying this sentence full of hints, Zhang Zi turned around and left the laboratory. She disappeared at the end of the corridor on the 20th floor. Obviously, this ambitious woman had made up her mind. Even if her son hated her for the rest of his life, she would do whatever it took to get what she wanted. In the face of the temptation of money and power, all family and love were as fragile as paper. Watching his nominal mother walk into the elevator, Zhang Cheng quickly took out his phone and dialed the first number in his contact list. After about a few seconds, the Pullman's voice came through the phone. Master, do you have any orders? The identity you arranged for me has a small problem. I need you to deal with it. Zhang Cheng ordered in an unquestionable tone. Understood. I'll be there right away. Although the Pullman didn't know what the so-called small problem was, he still agreed without hesitation. Chapter 380. Half an hour later, in a high-end restaurant near the building, Zhang Cheng was methodically enjoying the original Chinese food that had not been improved in any way. Ever since he came to this familiar yet strange magical world, he hadn't had a decent meal. Sometimes, in order to save time and carry out all kinds of complicated magic research, he even used fast food and takeout as his only source of food. Today was a rare opportunity to relax, so naturally, he wouldn't mistreat his tongue that was about to forget what was truly delicious. As for the Pullman who just came from Brooklyn, he patiently sat by the side and didn't have the slightest intention of disturbing his master's meal. After another 10 minutes, when Zhang Cheng finished the last bowl of soup with a satisfied face, he picked up the napkin and wiped his mouth. He raised his head and stared at his subordinate until the latter was a little restless. Then he said, When you arranged my identity, you didn't say that my nominal mother is a 100% career woman. Her desire for career success surpasses everything else. Sorry, sir, I don't understand what you mean. After all, you are a powerful wizard, and she is just an ordinary woman. As long as you give the order, I can get rid of her at any time. The Pullman carefully replied, No, you don't understand. Her existence is very important to me, so you can't get rid of her and you can't casually modify her memory. Otherwise, it is likely to affect my future plans. Forget it. Even if I explain it to you, you won't understand. Now tell me about this small trouble. How are you going to solve it? After that, Zhang Cheng handed the waitress a credit card and two $20 bills. The credit card was used to pay the bill, and the bills were for the tip. According to the customs of the Western service industry, The customer usually had to pay an additional service fee of 5% to 15% of the price of the meal, which was the legendary tip. At the same time, tips were also part of the main source of income for people in the service industry. Although he personally didn't think that it was a good habit to force the customer to pay an additional fee, this was the general situation, so he didn't want to be too unconventional. The Pullman watched the waitress happily walk towards the cashier. He took a deep breath and said with uncertainty, "That depends on you." Although the Parliament has a clear rule that no magical item is allowed to fall into the hands of ordinary people, and the lord of the area must be responsible for retrieving it once it is discovered, herbs are obviously not within the scope of this rule. So now I can choose to help this nominal mother become a new member of New York's upper class? Zhang Cheng stroked his chin as a playful smile appeared on his face. The Pullman nodded seriously. "Yes, but I have to remind you that if this plant called the peace bloom is really as you described, it is very likely that it will be targeted by some people in the underground world. Maybe they wouldn't dare to snatch it from you openly, but it's normal for them to use some small tricks." That sounds interesting. I was just worrying about how to get more experimental materials, and you gave me a good suggestion. I believe that the Parliament won't interfere with how I deal with those daring idiots, right? Also, find someone to sign a business contract for me. Remember, the production must be firmly limited to 10 tons per year. Zhang Cheng hesitated for a moment and quickly made a bold decision. Compared to losing some of the Sunwell's water, he was more interested in the various miraculous abilities that were born from the bloodline in this world. If it wasn't for the fact that his unscrupulous capture and crazy experiments could easily cause public anger, he would have already turned New York's underground world upside down, tying the aptitude users to the operating table and cutting open their stomachs. Anyway, 10 tons of peace bloom a year would only consume about 1/30th of the production. For someone like him who had learned how to extract energy, it was negligible. As you wish. Don't worry, I will arrange everything properly, and there won't be any mistakes. The Pullman stood up and bowed respectfully before leaving the restaurant. As a complete egoist, he didn't care how many unlucky people in the future couldn't resist the temptation and became the lab rats of this terrifying young magus in front of him. He also didn't care what kind of terrible torture the captives would suffer. As long as his and his family's lives weren't threatened, he didn't care even if the entire New York's underground world was dyed red with blood. In his eyes, the underground world followed the law of the jungle, where the strong preyed on the weak. The strong dominated everything, and the weak could only crawl in front of the strong and beg for protection and mercy. Ever since his ability awakened, the Pullman had been living cautiously on the ground for more than 20 years. Now he hoped to stand up and become a big shot who was second only to one person, even if the price was to throw away his last shred of conscience and completely embrace the darkness. After taking back the credit card from the waitress, Zhang Cheng left the restaurant and walked aimlessly along the bustling business center of Manhattan. But before he could think of what to do next, a black car suddenly stopped next to him, and a familiar figure stepped out of the car. "Good morning, Mr. Zhang. My master wants to see you right away." Lauren Corney, who had met Zhang Zian once at the funeral, lowered her voice and invited Zhang Zian. From his emotionless eyes, Zhang Heng could tell that the so-called invitation was just a polite way of saying it. If he dared to refuse, it would be a forced invitation. "Is it Mr. Laffern?" Zhang Cheng asked with interest. "That's right. Please get in the car quickly. Don't waste time. In an hour, my master will board the plane and leave New York for Europe." Lauren Corney impatiently urged. "Got it." Zhang Cheng nodded lightly and got into the back seat without thinking, because he also wanted to see how powerful this old man who stood at the peak of power in North America was, and how big the gap was between him and the other party. "Thank you very much for your cooperation. Rena, drive." Lauren Corney gestured to the female driver in the driver's seat, and soon the car began to move forward along the road. About 20 minutes later, the three of them arrived at the VIP lounge at JFK Airport. They saw an old man with gray hair and a short beard sitting on the sofa, fiddling with a metal Rubik's Cube in his hand. Unlike most Rubik's Cubes, this Rubik's Cube was not painted with any color. Instead, The surface of the grid was engraved with strange, mysterious symbols. Whenever the Rubik's Cube rotated, some of the symbols would flash faintly. Zhang Cheng, who had always been very sensitive to magic, immediately stepped forward and said to the old man, "Dear Mr. Senator, can I have a look at the Rubik's Cube?" Chapter 381. Kacha, kacha, kacha. Along with the crisp sound, the Rubik's Cube kept spinning in Zhang Cheng's hands, and the various symbols kept flashing. After a full 10 minutes, he finally found the hidden pattern behind the complex symbols. Obviously, this Rubik's Cube was not a toy, but a lock. Only those who were smart enough and had a deep understanding of alchemy could open it. He wasn't sure if this was a small test, but he quickly pieced together the correct order based on the subtle differences between the symbols. When the last symbol moved to the correct position, the Rubik's Cube suddenly released a dazzling light. The next second, all the metal blocks covering the surface began to fall off, revealing a small bottle filled with golden liquid. Although the bottle was only half the size of a pinky finger, the liquid inside emitted an extremely powerful energy, giving off a sacred and inviolable feeling. Just when Zhang Cheng's attention was firmly attracted, the old man, sitting on the sofa, suddenly clapped his hands without warning. He praised while clapping. "Unbelievable! You actually used only 10 minutes to unlock the runic lock that I personally set up. No wonder Miles gave all his alchemy knowledge to you before he died. You were very close to Councilman Miles?" Zhang Cheng raised his head, a surprised expression on his face. He couldn't understand why the dead old man would come to him in the end if he had such a strong backer. "Close? No, young man, our relationship is not as simple as that. To be precise, it was I who gave him the knowledge and power to become a respected alchemist. Unfortunately, he was too obsessed with the pursuit of resurrection and immortality, so much so that his body collapsed prematurely. Otherwise, it would be easy for an alchemist to live to 100 or 200 years old." At this point, Lafren shook his head in annoyance. His eyes revealed undisguised disdain, but at the same time, there was a little anger and regret. Zhang Cheng carefully observed the old man's reaction. After a while, he asked, "You are Councilman Miles' teacher. How come I've never heard anyone mention it?" "Ha! No, you misunderstood. I only said that I gave him knowledge and power. I didn't say that I was his teacher, and I also didn't say that I was an alchemist. On the contrary, I don't have any talent in this area at all. I just gave Miles the relics of an old friend who died." The old man explained with a laugh. "I see." After recalling the books and notes that he read in the bookshelves in the old house, Zhang Cheng immediately realized that the profound theoretical knowledge related to the creation of life and resurrection of the dead did not come from Miles' hands. Or else, Miles didn't need to resurrect him at some time in the future and could just directly create a new body. At least, this was done with the alchemy of the book author's knowledge. Unfortunately, Miles might be able to reconstruct someone else's body, but he couldn't do anything about his own broken body. Of course, it was easier said than done, especially when alchemy in this world involved the complicated transformation of mass and energy. Think about it. How did Einstein describe the relationship between matter and energy in the special theory of relativity? Any object with mass stored invisible internal energy, and this energy stored by mass was unimaginably large. If the relationship between mass and energy was expressed in mathematical form, the energy stored by an object was equal to the mass of the object multiplied by the square of the speed of light. Later, under the persistent research of scientists, antimatter was finally discovered. People realized that only when matter and antimatter were combined would it be completely destroyed and converted into pure energy. The terrifying annihilation effect caused by this process was far more powerful than any known nuclear weapon. The principle of alchemy was to use the body of a mortal with the help of mysterious magic to complete the conversion of mass and energy that scientists could not imagine. Often, the more powerful the alchemy, the more the conversion efficiency needed. Although it was far from the terrifying level of mass multiplied by the square of the speed of light, it was not to be underestimated. At least, destroying a modern city was as easy as eating and drinking for a master alchemist. As long as they spent a certain amount of time to draw the corresponding magic runes at several intersections of the city, and then stood in the central area to guide it, it would not take long for the converted energy to be enough to tear the earth apart, triggering catastrophic consequences such as earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions. Powerful magic creations. Unparalleled destructive power, breaking the boundary between life and death. And the coveted magic potion. The power of alchemists was so powerful that even beginners who had just shown their talent would be looked at in a different light. At least, they had a higher development potential than ordinary residents of the underground world. Understanding this point, Zhang Cheng seemed to have suddenly understood something. He smiled and put the bottle of unknown liquid on the table. "Dear Mr. Councilman, you took the time out of your busy schedule to call me here today. Is it just to say this? You are very smart, much smarter than Miles. It seems that I can save a lot of unnecessary nonsense and get straight to the point." After saying that, Lafren gave Lorne Corney a look. The latter understood tacitly and quickly cut off the power in the VIP room, and then led his men to guard the door. For a moment, only the two of them were left in the empty hall. Because of the loss of power, it was pitch black. Fortunately, they were not ordinary people. The mere darkness did not cause any hindrance. They could even see each other's expressions clearly. After a full minute, Lafren was the first to break the silence. With a cold voice, he said, "You know, I once had great expectations for Miles. For that, I did not hesitate to offend a few extremely dangerous people. But he disappointed me, so now I'm very angry. So angry that I want to kill his family to vent my anger. But he is not stupid. Before he died, he signed a demon contract with you, so I had to give up my original plan. Now tell me, will you be the one I have been waiting for 70 years? I'm sorry. Before I confirm what you want me to do, I'm afraid I can't give you an answer." Zhang Cheng remained calm, unaffected by the old man's powerful aura. He could feel that in that moment, the old man's body seemed to have released a terrifying power that could not be described with words. It was even more terrifying than the demon Erida sealed in his body. Chapter 382. "Oh, are you trying to do a little test on me?" Zhang Cheng took a step back without batting an eyelid, secretly raising his vigilance. However, he did not immediately take out the weapons, magic props, and potions in his magic pouch. He did not even activate the protective runes. The reason was simple. Before figuring out the real intention of the other party, he did not want to expose his trump card too early. Lafren stood up from the sofa and shook his head gently. "A little test? Maybe for me, but for you, it is likely to be the end of your life. So believe me, drink the angel's blood, and then do your best to show your talent in alchemy until I begin to believe that you are the one I have been waiting for 70 years. As the last word fell, a silver-white electric arc suddenly appeared in the air. Although it flashed like a meteor, Zhang Cheng smelled a faint fishy smell in the air. As a person who knew a little about natural science, he immediately recognized the smell of ozone. The electric arc just now had caused the surrounding air to be electrochemically reacted to create ozone out of thin air. How is it? Do you feel the power that should only belong to the gods? The most destructive natural phenomenon, the thunder? As he spoke, Lafren's entire body began to flicker with a terrifying silver electric light. In particular, the thick electric snakes darted around everywhere, emitting crackling sounds. Obviously, Lafren Corney cut off the power, not because he was afraid that the conversation between the two would be captured by the surveillance equipment, but because he was afraid that once his master used his ability, the entire JFK airport would fall into a blackout and paralysis. Looking at the terrifying scene in front of him, Zhang Cheng did not flinch. Instead, he bent down elegantly and responded with a smile. Indeed, in human myths and legends, thunder has always been the weapon of the most powerful gods, such as Zeus in Greek mythology and Thor in Norse mythology. Especially the latter, although in the records of ordinary people, Thor was the son of Odin. In fact, he was Odin's elder brother, the supreme king of the Norse gods. But later, According to the needs of their own civilization, people changed their positions and relationships without authorization. If I'm not mistaken, you should have awakened Thor's demigod blood hidden in your body, right? Why do you think it's Thor and not Zeus? Lafren stopped and asked with a half-smile. It's very simple. It's the runes carved on the Rubik's Cube. Maybe I don't know how these mysterious magical symbols that have been lost for thousands of years work, but it's not difficult to recognize them. Zhang Cheng answered without thinking. Although he had read some examples of the awakening of divine blood in a thick book about the history of the underground world, he never expected to encounter one so soon. One had to know that in this world, God was not just a legend or a delusion of people. It was something that truly existed. Some of them belonged to the remnants of the prehistoric magic civilization, while others were some powerful magical species. Because of the long history, most of the relevant information had been lost. No one knew whether these gods finally died in the Great War or were unable to withstand the ravages of time and slowly aged and were finally buried in some corner of the earth. The only thing that was known was that the gods had once married with primitive humans and gave birth to some mixed-race children, which are the alternate gods, demigods, or heroes in the myths and legends. These guys then combined with ordinary people and slowly spread the bloodline of the gods. Now it was so thin that it was almost undetectable. According to the rough statistics of the Parliament, from the first year of AD to 1000 AD, there were less than 12 cases of the awakening of divine blood in the world. From 1000 AD to the present, the number had dropped to 6 people. As for BC, it was too chaotic and there were no clear records at all. The old man standing in front of him was the only one in the last 300 years. If he guessed correctly, the old man should be more than 260 years old. With the power of the divine blood, not only did he have a longer lifespan than ordinary people, but his physique was also comparable to the nobles of the werewolves. Other than nuclear weapons and a few extremely powerful armor-piercing shells, normal firearms could not kill him. Hearing Zhang Cheng's explanation, Lafren's face revealed a satisfied smile. At the same time, he nodded slightly. Not bad. You have extraordinary sharp observation skills and a mind. This is very important. However, these 2 points are not enough. You need to show your talent in alchemy. Remember, I am not interested in your sorcerer abilities, so please do not waste my time and patience. Of course, I want to see what level my alchemy is at. After saying that, Zhang Cheng calmly touched the alchemy stone on his finger. In an instant, a yellow ray of light shot out from his finger and accurately hit the wall not far away that was covered with tiles. In less than a few seconds, the wall began to distort and finally turned into a 3-meter-tall stone puppet covered in insulating tiles. Boom! The puppet, which had just finished molding, did not say anything. It raised its fist and fiercely punched the old man who was covered in electricity. However, the old man only took a step to the side and easily avoided the clumsy attack of the puppet. He commented with a professional attitude. The efficiency of energy conversion is 15%. Although it is not outstanding, considering that you are still a beginner, it is quite amazing. The most important thing is that you actually thought of using insulating tiles to block my lightning in such a short time. You have quite a tactical mind. But this is not enough. You need to show more. Don't worry, Mr. Councilman. You have to give me some time to warm up. After all, alchemy is not a fighting style that I am familiar with. I need to explore it. Zhang Cheng pretended to blink playfully and then focused all his energy on the inside of the alchemy stone. He wanted to feel the magical power of this magical creation and the wonderful process of energy and mass conversion. About a minute later, he suddenly took a deep breath and used the protruding edge of his watch to cut open his palm, allowing the blood to slowly drip down. The blood seemed to be guided by some mysterious force, and drop by drop, it eventually formed a complex circular pattern. Serious. Focus. Staring at the face of a young man, not far away, Lafren felt like he saw the shadow of an old friend who had accompanied him for more than a century. In a short few seconds when the old man was in a trance, the pattern on the ground burst out with an ominous red light. Then, a soft, black, unknown substance gushed out and finally formed a clone that was almost identical to him. And this clone's whole body was covered in dazzling electric light. Every movement of the clone was imitating the former. You copied me. Lafren's pupils suddenly shrank. Chapter 383. Interesting. You've successfully aroused my long-dormant curiosity, young man. Knowing that the creation in front of him that looked and had the exact same abilities as him was not a clone, Lafren's eyes immediately showed a look of interest. He directly swung his arm and threw out a thick electric arc bang. After an explosion, the electric arc hit the heart of the alchemist's creation. Normally, an electric shock of this level would electrocute even the residents of the underground world to death on the spot. If one's magic resistance and vitality were more tenacious, it might only be possible for one's heart to stop for a few seconds. However, the alchemist did not seem to have any reaction at all. It threw out the electric arc in the exact same way as the alchemist, perfectly replicating his previous actions. Similarly, Lafren, who had the blood of the thunder god, was immune to electric shocks. After a round, neither of them could hurt the other. They just stared at each other like this. As for Zhang Cheng, he had already retreated to a relatively safe distance. He raised the corner of his mouth and muttered to himself in a voice that only he could hear, "It's not easy to defeat my own shadow, at least not before discovering the little secret of this interesting creation." There is no doubt that compared to most spellcasters who like to use powerful spells to defeat their opponents, he preferred to use spells that consumed little and had strange effects. It would be best if he could completely confuse his enemies. With a deeper understanding of various systems of magic power, he increasingly felt that direct damage spells such as Fireball, Ice Arrow, Flame Explosion, and Arcane Missile were actually the least worth wasting his time on. On the contrary, the spells that could create life, change the laws of physics, and explore time and space were the ones that were truly worth studying and studying in depth. After a few short attempts, Lafren quickly discovered the abnormality of the alchemist's creation. It didn't take the initiative to attack. It's just imitating my actions? In order to confirm his conjecture, he threw the alchemist's creation 3 times in a row. However, he did not throw out the electric arc. In the end, he laughed happily and praised, "Ha ha ha, incredible creativity. The little thing you created can't really release lightning at all. It's just conveying false information to the surroundings through sound and images. I have to say that you're quite cunning. You know how to deceive your enemies. Thank you for your praise. I didn't expect you to see through this little trick so quickly." After saying that, Zhang Cheng raised his hand and snapped his fingers. In the blink of an eye, the clone that looked exactly like the old man no longer emitted electric light and slowly turned back into a mass of unknown black substance. No, young man, this is no small trick. I guarantee that anyone who sees it for the first time will inevitably be fooled. You can use this time to launch an attack or prepare a more powerful spell. In short, it will buy you at least 5 minutes. All right, now I've basically recognized your potential in the field of alchemy. Next, I will use 1/10 of my strength to release a fatal blow. If you're not confident, then you better listen to me and drink the angelic blood. As the last word fell, Lafren raised his right hand high and released a dazzling light that was as bright as the sun. In a few seconds, lightning had been shaped into a hammer, and at the same time, it kept making ear-piercing noises. Damn it! You're not going to kill me, are you? Seeing this scene, Zhang Qing's expression suddenly became solemn. He quickly used the power of alchemy to construct a huge ceramic wall around his body. As a mage and warlock who was extremely sensitive to energy, he could clearly feel that this was no longer an ordinary lightning bolt. From the moment the electric light was shaped, it was a weapon from the gods. It was a high-energy polymer that could not be described with words. It was like the crimson comets that passed through the world of Song of Ice and Fire every once in a while. Its destructive power was not something that naturally formed lightning could compare to. Looking at the ceramic wall that was getting thicker and thicker, Lafren responded meaningfully, "Kill you? No, how could I kill you? You're the only hope I can find at the moment. I just want you to feel power, real power, and then move in this direction. When you meet the requirements, I will share with you a secret hidden behind the council. Secret? Zhang Cheng frowned subconsciously. Yes, it concerns the fate of this world, and also your and my fate. After dragging out the word, Lafren suddenly threw out the hammer-shaped lightning bolt in his hand. There was no explosion caused by the normal discharge, nor was there any blinding light. The small hammer that flickered with silver light spun a few times in the air and smashed into the ceramic wall that was 3 meters tall. The next second, Asterisk crack, crack, crack. Asterisk, the hard ceramic wall seemed to be under the pressure of a powerful force field. Large amounts of cracks quickly appeared on its surface, as if it could collapse at any time. Not good. After realizing that the ceramic wall could not withstand the terrifying power contained within the high-energy polymer, Zhang Cheng did not hesitate to activate the arcane defensive runes hidden around his body. In an instant, a total of 80 runes that were carefully prepared to resist and reflect various forms of energy immediately appeared and revolved around his body. The outermost runes had already begun to collide with the silver lightning hammer. However, it did not last more than 5 seconds before several of the runes shattered. Under the terrifying discharge, the entire defensive system was on the verge of collapse. Oh, this is your trump card? I have to admit that it is very good. If you can continue to perfect it, you might be able to withstand my attacks one day. But now, Lafren shook his head with a smile, the meaning of his words self-evident. In the blink of an eye, the hammer that had been drained of most of its energy by the arcane runes finally broke through the final defense and smashed into Zhang Cheng's chest. In an instant, white lightning illuminated the entire room. He did not even have the chance to drink the angelic blood in his hand. He fell straight to the ground and fell into a deep coma. His skin and muscles were charred black, and if not for the weak beating of his heart, he might have been mistaken for a charred corpse. Lafren walked over to the coin, picked up the bottle that had fallen to the ground, and poured it into Zhang Cheng's mouth. He then whispered with a faint smile, "Grow up quickly, young man. From now on, our fates are closely linked. Master, are you sure he is the one you are waiting for?" Lauren Corney had walked out of the shadows at some point and asked cautiously, "No, I'm not completely sure yet, but he's the closest candidate. All right, don't think too much about it. Clean up this place. We will be leaving for Europe in 10 minutes. I don't want those old farts to know that I have found a new person to replace Miles." Chapter 384. Cold. Dark. Zhang Cheng had never experienced what death felt like, but he could feel that this was the closest he had ever been to death. He didn't know how much time had passed, but when he opened his eyes again, he found himself lying naked on a slightly shabby bed. All of his important items, including his magic backpack, were placed near a cabinet not far away, especially his clothes that had large traces of carbonization. From one side, it proved how terrifying the power of the attack was. Just as he struggled to sit up, trying to figure out what happened after he fainted, and where he was at the moment, there was a sudden sound of footsteps outside the tightly shut door. About 3 to 5 seconds later, a young woman with a haggard face opened the door and walked in. She had brown, slightly curly hair and looked no older than 25 years old. She wore a tight white tank top on her upper body and a pair of black, lacy, translucent shorts on her lower body. She didn't care if she was exposed at all. Not only did her eyes have dark circles, but due to long-term lack of sleep, there was an extremely unhealthy green color under her eyes. But the moment she saw Zhang Cheng, she immediately showed an ecstatic expression and cheered loudly. "Oh God, you actually came back to life. I was just thinking, if you were dead, should I call the police? Or should I call those guys who are responsible for burying corpses? You saved me?" Zhang Cheng raised his eyebrows and deliberately probed with an uncertain tone. "No, of course not. I'm not that kind. To be exact, someone gave me $5,000 to take care of you until you recovered. To be honest, according to your miserable state, I didn't think you could live for more than 12 hours. But the interesting thing is, you seem to have survived." The woman explained with great interest as she admired the rather stylish upper body of the young man on the bed. Someone sent me here? Okay, then can you tell me where this place is? And how long have I been unconscious? After figuring out that the other party was not a resident of the underground world, Zhang Cheng quickly dispelled the prepared arcane missile and began to observe the surrounding environment. The faded floor, old furniture with paint peeling off, cheap clothes and shoes. Everything pointed to the fact that this was a poor family living at the bottom of society. The woman did not seem to notice how dangerous the young man lying on the bed was. She leaned against the door and answered, "This is Queens. You've been unconscious for 3 days and 3 nights. Other than water, you haven't eaten anything. If you're hungry, I can go down and get you some milk, juice, and fried chicken. Don't even think about a feast. First of all, I'm not going to spend that kind of money. Secondly, there won't be any decent restaurant that delivers food here at night because the delivery person is likely to be robbed on the way or directly eat a bullet and die." Hee hee, sounds interesting. Zhang Cheng glanced at the dark street outside the window and pursed his lips into a playful smile. Obviously, these violent streets that were full of danger to ordinary people were as easy as taking a stroll in his own backyard compared to what he had experienced. Interesting. If you're high on drugs and a group of lunatics pointed a gun at your head, you won't find it interesting. The woman rolled her eyes in annoyance. She crossed her arms in front of her chest and squeezed the originally unfathomable ravine out of the scale of the Mariana Trench. Unfortunately, Zhang Cheng completely ignored the hint behind these subtle movements. He jumped off the bed, opened the cabinet, took out a set of sportswear, and put it on. Then, barefoot, he picked up his important belongings and said with a smile, "Thank you for taking care of me these past few days. I'll send someone to send you a gift later." "You're leaving? Now?" The woman opened her mouth wide in surprise. "That's right. I've already wasted a lot of time, and if I continue to go missing, it will soon cause some unpredictable consequences." After saying that, Zhang Cheng left the old house without looking back and walked quickly along the street. He didn't notice that less than a minute after he left, an uninvited guest appeared in the room out of thin air and grabbed the woman's slender neck. Although the latter struggled desperately and even wanted to use her nails to poke the other party's eyes, unfortunately, before she could do anything, her whole body quickly condensed into a translucent crystal state. Finally, with a bang, she fell to the ground and shattered into a mysterious substance the size of a grain of rice. Perhaps no one would believe that these crystal-clear, tiny particles were a person, a sexy and beautiful young woman. After doing all this, the uninvited guests circled the house several times. After confirming that there was no second person, he picked up the phone and dialed one of the numbers. He lowered his voice and reported, "Sir, according to your request, I've erased all traces." "Very good. Now go back. If there's a need, I'll wake you up again. Remember, keep an eye on the Desire Witch Catherine. If she crosses the line, teach her a lesson for me." Another gloomy voice came from the phone. "Understood." At the same time, far away in the corridor of a high-class hotel in Tirana, the capital of a small European country, Albania, Lauren Corney hung up the phone in his hand, pushed open the door, walked into the room, and whispered a few words in his master's ear. After Lafren heard this, he immediately nodded with satisfaction. "Well done. In addition, don't interfere too much. Sometimes pain and suffering are also a kind of training." "Understood." Lauren Corney bowed with one hand on his chest and quickly left the room. Looking at his back, another middle-aged man in the room with a gloomy face who looked to be in his 40s suddenly approached him and asked in a slightly playful tone, "Dear old friend, you're not planning something interesting again, are you?" "Sorry, John. I don't want to share my secrets with a necromancer who has lived for hundreds of years." Lafren picked up the cup and took a sip of black tea, directly refusing. "Ha ha. Well, you're still as cautious as before. It's okay. Everyone has secrets that they don't want to tell others. I can understand. Now, let's talk about the specific matters of seizing the fragment world. According to the ancient tradition, as the master, I have the right to set the rules of the game, right?" The middle-aged man called John asked with 2 lifeless eyes. "Yes. Please tell me your rules of the game." Lafren gave an affirmative answer without hesitation. Chapter 385. 2.5 hours later, Zhang Cheng sat on his own chair on the top floor of the stronghold, looking at the two unfamiliar faces not far away. After a full minute, he threw the two badges that symbolized his status as a knight to Ebon Bast. He then smiled and said to Ebon Bast, "I am very satisfied with your work efficiency. From now on, the Spellbreaker will be yours to use. Unless there are special circumstances, I will not take it back easily. Thank you for your generosity. To me, there's no better reward than this." Urban Best held the magic sword at his waist tightly and bowed elegantly. "So, you're going to be my boss from now on?" Jessie Livermore asked as she fiddled with the badge with the letter K printed on it. "Why? Do you have any complaints?" Zhang Cheng glanced at the suitcase behind Jessie, which was emitting a strong aura of death. As a mage who had killed tens of thousands of living creatures and used them to create powerful undead creatures, he could guess that there was a powerful undead creature inside, even without using detection spells. However, compared to the high-level undead creatures of the Scourge army, it was still too weak and did not deserve much attention. "No, on the contrary, I'm very satisfied. Compared to those old and ugly men, or those crazy women with all kinds of weird styles and behaviors, the young and handsome you are undoubtedly much more pleasing to the eye. Please allow me to offer my loyalty, my respected lord." Jessie Livermore knelt on one knee and made a symbolic curtsy. "I accept your loyalty. Now get up. I promise you won't regret the choice you made today." After saying that, Zhang Cheng took out the essence of death from the stitch of abomination and placed it in Jessie Livermore's palm. Instantly, the power of death and hatred was emitted from the crystal. Jessie Livermore couldn't help but tremble. Her entire body was quickly filled with the power of death. She could even feel that when she held this unknown thing in her hand, her innate ability began to increase exponentially. Tremble. Excitement. Excitement. After the restless power in her body calmed down, she raised her head and asked with a fanatical expression, "What is this?" "The essence of death, a substance that only exists in the body of the most powerful undead creatures." "How is it? Do you feel its power?" "As long as you can ensure your loyalty, you will get more in the future." Zhang Cheng smiled and promised. "Ha ha, the essence of death? It really lives up to its name." Jessie Livermore laughed crazily. She believed that as long as she had enough of this stuff, she would definitely become stronger and stronger. She could even become a true master of death, the queen of the underworld. Leaving the crazy woman behind, Zhang Cheng turned his gaze to the last bald, muscular man covered in all kinds of strange tattoos, Bram Chalice. Of these tattoos of death tattoos, the tattoos tattoos, the tattoos, the tattoos, the tattoos, the tattoos, the tattoos, the tattoos of death tattoos. As for those strange tattoos, they were not made with lasers or needles. Instead, they were natural magic patterns. Through these patterns, not only could he directly release the innate spells he was born with, but he could also activate the hidden power of his bloodline and complete the transformation of his form. "Prove that you are stronger than me. I only obey the strong." Bram Chalice was obviously a person who didn't like to talk nonsense. He raised his fist, which was burning with flames, and smashed it over. "I like your character." Zhang Cheng smiled and cast a protective flame barrier on himself without batting an eyelid. Then he grabbed Bram's wrist. If it was in the past, he would have pulled away a relatively safe distance and slowly defeated him with various spells. But just half an hour ago, he found that his physique seemed to have been greatly enhanced. Whether it was strength, speed, or recovery from injuries, there was also an inconceivable divine energy. Needless to say, this must be the effect of the angel's blood. But he wasn't sure if this enhancement was temporary or would slowly weaken over time. "You are immune to fire damage?" Bram Chalice's pupils shrank when he found that the flames on his fist didn't cause even the slightest bit of burn. "Don't forget, I am a sorcerer. I have mastered many magical spells, such as this." Just as he finished speaking, Zhang Cheng's palm suddenly shot out a dazzling electric snake, and with a snap, it hit Bram's chest fiercely. The terrifying high-voltage electric current created a half-meter-long, arm-thick wound on the spot. Whether it was the skin or the muscles around the wound, there were traces of black carbonization. The unbearable pain made Bram Chalice kneel on the ground with a plop. His whole body kept twitching, and at the same time he bit his lower lip and tried desperately to stop himself from screaming. His two protruding eyeballs seemed as if they would fall out of their sockets at any time. It took him a full 5 minutes to recover from the powerful electric shock. As he took in large mouthfuls of fresh air, he raised his head and said in a tone full of awe, "You are very strong, stronger than me, so I will obey your orders until the day I surpass you." "No problem. I welcome your challenge at any time." Zhang Cheng shrugged his shoulders indifferently. In fact, the electric shock just now was him imitating Lafren's attack through arcane magic. In any case, he had directly endured the terrifying power of a god. Naturally, he wouldn't come out empty-handed. To be exact, after experiencing it personally, he had a new understanding of the natural phenomenon of lightning. The power of lightning didn't depend entirely on voltage and current, but also on another thing. That was the magnetic field. Lafren, who had awakened the bloodline of a god, relied on the powerful magnetic field built in his body to provide additional energy for the electric charge, so the indescribable high-energy polymer was born. Although Zhang Cheng couldn't do it to the same extent as Lafren for the time being, it wasn't difficult for him to simulate a little. At least, he now had several ways to improve lightning spells in his mind. Failure and setbacks were never a reason for a real powerhouse to retreat. After seeing the most powerful force on the surface of this world, not only was he not frightened, but he became even more excited. This was because he now had a clear goal to surpass. At the same time, he also had a great interest in the many gods and myths and legends. Were these guys the original inhabitants of the earth, or were they cosmic visitors from the endless starry sky? Were they dead, or just temporarily left the planet? Compared to the Titans who transformed Azeroth, who was stronger? Chapter 386. With the addition of the 3 knights, who were quite intimidating, the territory, which originally lacked manpower to manage, was soon on the right track. Whether it was the so-called tax or the control of the gangs and smuggling, everything was carried out in an orderly manner. However, compared to the other lords who were frantically recruiting for the upcoming war, Zhang Cheng's little actions were not enough to attract anyone's attention. Even when the desire which Catherine and the elemental messenger Cain repeatedly hinted at him, he pretended not to hear and continued doing what he was doing. This situation continued until there were less than 5 days before the deadline. The Pullman could not help but remind Soren, "My lord, are you really not planning to participate in this war game?" "Who told you that I don't plan to participate?" Zhang Cheng asked without turning his head as he admired the almost completed renovation of the stronghold. It had to be said that the illegal immigrants from Mexico and South America were much more efficient than the lazy American workers. Without the pesky labor union and labor regulations, they completed 80% of the renovation in less than 3 weeks. If it was a regular construction company, it would take at least 3 to 5 months to complete the project. The only downside was that these people did not even have an ID card or bank account and only accepted cash as payment. However, for Zhang Cheng, who had a large amount of illegal cash, there was no problem at all. Right now, this large 6-story fitness club had been transformed into a comprehensive entertainment and consumption place that combined bars, nightclubs, and hotels. Soren believed that once it opened, it would soon become a place for countless illegal people to trade and negotiate. As for whether it could guarantee profits, Soren did not care at all. It would be best if it could be profitable. If it could not, then he would use fake accounts to launder money and turn a large amount of illegal cash into legal income. The Pullman vigilantly glanced at the renovation workers who walked past him. After the workers walked away, he continued to ask with a puzzled expression, "Since you want to participate, why not recruit an army? Even if the strength of the temporary recruits is generally weak, they can still be used as cannon fodder." Zhang Cheng shook his head slightly and replied meaningfully, "No, you don't understand. I have already prepared an army. It's just that you haven't seen it yet. Also, if I remember correctly, the Parliament seems to not allow lords to use large amounts of heavy firearms, cannons, and anything related to technology in the war game, right? Yes, but enchanted bullets and hunting rifles are not part of the restriction. After all, the purpose of the war game is to select a powerful counselor who can suppress many lords. If a large amount of technological weapons are allowed, it will undoubtedly go against the original intention, and the lords who lose will not be convinced. The Pullman carefully explained. That's right. This also meant that when the war began, the number of participating soldiers would be limited. If one died, there would be one less. The first lord to lose all his subordinates would be exposed to the enemy's direct attack range. Simply put, a war game is like a chess game with many people participating in it. Although the number of chess pieces on the field can't 100% determine the outcome, it can affect the direction of the victory scale. As he spoke, Zhang Cheng's eyes, Pullman, of course, and of the Pullman. The last time he showed such an expression, he turned Old Town, the largest and most prosperous port in Westeros, into a land of death where the undead ran rampant. The Pullman seemed to have sensed something and shivered subconsciously. He lowered his voice and asked tentatively, "You can't be thinking of—" Before he could finish, Zhang Cheng nodded with a faint smile. Haha, that's right. I think it's time to use that secret weapon. Think about it. When all the lords are busy attacking each other, they will definitely not notice that one or two insignificant pawns are missing. When they use up all their chess pieces and discover that a group of crazy werewolves who don't know the meaning of fear suddenly appear behind them, how wonderful will their expressions be? I understand now. The reason why you didn't recruit an army is actually to numb everyone. The Pullman clenched his fists tightly, unable to control himself. As someone who had personally witnessed Clover's terrifying infectious ability, he had no doubt that if he released this fellow, he would be able to create an army of thousands of werewolves in a short period of time. Compared to normal werewolves, they were completely irrational and did not know the meaning of fear or pain. As long as the Alpha gave the order, they would immediately launch a suicidal charge. The Pullman couldn't help but tremble at the thought of an army of werewolves charging at him. Even a powerful lord like him would have to put in a lot of effort to deal with so many crazy werewolves. So, don't make it public and don't tell anyone about my plan. Just prepare a fully sealed truck in 5 days. Also, as someone who isn't good at fighting, you don't have to follow me to the fragment world. Just stay here and manage the territory. Having said that, Zhang Cheng walked out of the pungent house without looking back. He got into the car parked at the door and gestured to Patty, who was sitting in the driver's seat. The latter immediately started the car and drove along the road. After about 5 minutes, the sexy banshee raised the corner of her mouth and teased, "Are you sure it's a wise choice to tell your plan to a guy who used to be a cleaner? Why? Do you think the Pullman will betray me?" Zhang Cheng shrugged nonchalantly. "No, it's not to the extent of betrayal. I just feel that he doesn't have the ability to keep a secret," Patty hinted with a cold smile. "Ha ha! Since you can see that, do you think I can't see it? On the contrary, the reason why I told him is to let everyone know this secret. Then they will think that this is my trump card and ignore the truly terrifying thing." Zhang Cheng laughed as he revealed the secret hidden in the bottom of his heart. He was not stupid enough to think that he could defeat so many powerful lords with just a few hundred infected crazy werewolves. Clover was just a smoke bomb that he used to confuse his opponents. His real trump card was the giant dragon and death dragon knights that he could summon at any time. Especially the latter, he could easily resurrect a large number of corpses and vengeful spirits, ghouls, zombies, and skeletons, drowning his enemies with a sea of undead. "Oh, you actually have other trump cards." Patty widened her eyes in disbelief. Chapter 387. 5 days wasn't a long time, but it wasn't a short time either. At least for most of the lords in Brooklyn, this was the deadline to decide which faction they would join. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. On the day of assembly, except for Zhang Cheng, the madman who intended to kill everyone, the rest of the lords either chose to submit to the desire which Catherine or join the temporary alliance formed by Cain, Bane, and Cassandra. Sensing the strong smell of gunpowder in the air of the old warehouse, Brenda, who was a quarter vampire, had a cold glint in her eyes. She then opened her arms and shouted, "Welcome! We welcome you all, citizens of Brooklyn's underground world. First, let me announce the new rules of the game. This time, apart from you, there will be desperados from all over the world, as well as an angel and a demon. Whoever can seize the core of the fragment world first and return safely will be the winner. Secondly, I will send someone to check if you are carrying anything beyond the regulations. Finally, I will send you batch by batch to the entrance of the fragment world. Remember, no shouting, no fighting, and no asking any questions. Otherwise, I will drain all of your blood before the game officially begins. Then what are we waiting for? Let's get started, Mr. Councilman. You know, I'm already a little thirsty." Catherine licked her bright red lips. The aura exuding from her body made everyone present, regardless of whether they were men or women, have a strong impulse and desire. "Don't be impatient, my dear lady. I can understand your impatience, but please bear with it for a while." Brenda glanced at her with fear. If it were anyone else, he would have killed them without mercy to establish his authority, but the desire which was obviously not in this category. To be precise, although Catherine was still a lord on the surface, the power she possessed had long surpassed the limits of a lord. Even a member of the secondary council could not guarantee that he could defeat her in a battle of life and death. "All right, but please be quick. I'm angry at the betrayal of some people. You should know that once a woman is blinded by anger, she might do something irrational." With that, Catherine turned around and stared at Kane, who was dressed like an English gentleman. The latter did not seem to care about the hostility in his words at all. With a smile on his face, he placed one hand on his chest and bowed. "Are you talking about me, dear? Who else could it be but you? I really didn't expect you to endure for so many years just to strike back at the most critical moment." Catherine sneered and said sarcastically. Never in her wildest dreams did she expect that the man in front of her, who had prostrated himself at her feet for so long, would have such a sinister plot hidden in his heart. He had forcibly turned half of the lords who had originally chosen to rely on her to the enemy. "Ha ha! From the moment you seized this body, we were already mortal enemies. It was just that your arrogant personality gave you some kind of illusion, thinking that I would always succumb to the entanglement of emotions and desires. In fact, I have never forgotten what happened that night, and I will never forget your cruelty and heartlessness. Today, I will personally destroy your plans and everything you desire." Kay made a declaration of revenge under the gaze of countless pairs of eyes. As an old man who had endured humiliation, he had been looking forward to this day for too long. At the same time, he was also prepared to give up his life for this. "Presumptuous! Who gave you the courage to challenge me? The motley crew behind you?" Catherine was undoubtedly enraged. A purple light that symbolized powerful magic appeared in her pupils. "Sorry, I don't want to reveal my trump card too early, but let me give you a small hint. There is still a young man in Brooklyn who has not chosen to join either side. Guess who he will choose to help in the end?" With that, Kane turned his gaze to Zhang Cheng, who was sitting in a luxurious RV not far away and calmly drinking tea. Compared to most of the lords who flocked around him, his team was clearly much more deserted. There were only 5 people in total, 1 RV, and 1 fully enclosed truck. Just from the configuration alone, it did not look like they were going to participate in a tragic war, but more like they were going for an outing. However, whether it was Kane or the Desire Witch, neither of them showed the slightest bit of contempt, especially when they swept their eyes over the large, fully enclosed truck. Their expressions were solemn. After a full minute, Catherine stepped to the window and asked with a slightly threatening tone, "Dear Zhang, have you considered my proposal? Don't say that you are still considering it. That will make me very unhappy." "Ha, I'm sorry, madam. Please don't drag me into the conflict between you two. I have no interest in this, and I don't want to become a counselor. After the war game begins, I will find a place where no one is around and spend a few days quietly, until the victor is decided. As for whether you are happy or not, what does that have to do with me?" As the last word left his mouth, Zhang Cheng suddenly released the surging arcane energy within his body. All of the lords in the warehouse could clearly feel that suffocating power. Many of them could not even maintain their standing posture, falling to their knees with a thump, their hands and legs trembling uncontrollably. At this moment, everyone realized that the young man in front of them with a harmless smile did not rely on rare alchemy to gain the council's approval, as the rumors had it. On the contrary, the power he possessed was definitely not much weaker than the Desire Witch's. Very good, very good. Catherine was clearly enraged. Her purple eyes continuously released formless energy, and some of the stones and rubbish on the ground began to float. Just as she was about to explode, Kars hurriedly stepped forward and reminded her in a low voice, "Madam, the war game will begin soon. You don't have to rush. Also, Counselor Brenda is still here. You don't have to create a powerful enemy for yourself for no reason." Count yourself lucky. After Catherine said those harsh words, she turned around and returned to her team. Looking at the witch's flustered and exasperated appearance, Kane couldn't help but laugh. While laughing, he didn't forget to invite Zhang Heng. "Mr. Zhang, you have to understand that women are very petty creatures. Even if it's a small offense, they may bear grudges for a lifetime. I can guarantee that she will definitely find trouble with you next. If you don't mind, you can join us. As long as we work together, we will definitely be able to get rid of her. And whether it is me, Ben, or Cassandra, we have no intention of going further. So as long as you nod your head, you will immediately gain the allegiance of half of the lords in Brooklyn." The conditions sound very tempting, but unfortunately, I said that I will not join any side, because I am tired of being used, and I am even more tired of the meaningless fights between you all. From now on, I will forever remain neutral. No matter who wins or loses, it has nothing to do with me. Remember, do not test my bottom line, or I reserve the right to retaliate. Chapter 388. After more than 2 hours of inspection, Zhangqing finally arrived at the underground of an abandoned castle on the outskirts of the capital of Albania with the help of the ultra-long-distance teleportation device set up by the parliament. However, before they could catch their breath, they were chased into a stone wall that shone with a dark green light by a group of pale-faced people. When Zhangqing opened his eyes again, he suddenly found himself in a strange fragment world. Streaks of dark blue, silk-like translucent ribbons hung in the sky. Surrounding the ribbons were stars that filled the sky. It was as if they were directly exposed to the vast and boundless universe. However, the strange thing was that the air environment here seemed to be no different from that on Earth. No one felt suffocated or had difficulty breathing. Apart from that, there were also giant mushrooms, stalagmites, and colorful unknown plants that stretched as far as the eye could see. A stream that was flowing with a bright red liquid made a slight splashing sound. From time to time, there were some small animals and strange birds that passed by. Wow, it's like entering Alice in Wonderland's rabbit hole. Jessie Livermore whistled excitedly. This slightly neurotic woman, after absorbing the energy stored in the essence of death, was now overflowing with the aura of death, especially the unique design of the suitcase behind her. Even an ordinary person could feel the waves of coldness and gloominess coming from it. Sorry, Jessie. I have to remind you that this is much more dangerous than a rabbit hole. According to the records of the Parliament, the more beautiful a fragment world looks on the surface, the more dangerous it is, and the more difficult it is to be judged with common sense. Urban Best reminded her while stroking his chin. Jessie Livermore shrugged her shoulders casually. Don't worry, I'm not an idiot. Even if this world is not dangerous, with so many lords in it, it will be dangerous. I just don't know if the color of the stream was originally like this, or if it was dyed red by blood. Just as everyone began to examine this strange place with scrutinizing eyes, Bram Chalice suddenly strode to the stream, scooped up the bright red water, and gulped it down. He then smacked his lips and commented, "It's the taste of grape wine. No, this should be grape wine." Damn it, are you crazy? Jessie stared at the bald man, who was usually a little dumbfounded. She couldn't believe that there would be someone stupid enough to drink a liquid with an abnormal color. Wasn't he afraid of being poisoned to death? What's there to be afraid of? I'm immune to most poisons. Even if there's poison, it won't kill me. Also, if I'm not mistaken, those mushrooms and colorful fruits should be edible. This means that we don't have to worry about food. After saying that, Bram activated his glutton mode and tasted everything he could get his hands on, including the hard stalagmites. Seeing that his subordinates didn't know what to do, Zhang Cheng smiled and shook his head. He turned around and ordered the half-naked banshee behind him. "Patty, go let my little pet out for some fresh air. Although it's not the time for it to come into play yet, I think it's necessary to investigate it a little." "It's my pleasure." Patty bowed elegantly and quickly opened the locked back door of the truck. In an instant, a huge silver-white wolf, more than 5 meters long and 2.5 meters tall, jumped out of the sealed compartment. From its eyes filled with madness and tyranny, it could be seen that Clover didn't show any signs of recovering his rationality. If it weren't for the collar, he would have immediately turned into a wild beast that relied solely on instinct. "Hee, come on, little guy. Use your keen sense of smell and your beast-like sixth sense to find out the dangers hidden under the illusion one by one." Zhang Cheng stroked the thick fur of the wolf's foreleg and gave the order without thinking. The entrance to the fragment world wasn't a fixed teleportation, but a random one. This meant that everyone who entered would be teleported to a different location. What he had to do now was to figure out how big this place was and whether there were traces of civilization and intelligent life. He believed that the first few waves of overlords were doing the same thing. About 48 hours later, angels from heaven and demons from hell, as well as other desperados, would enter one after another. By then, it would be too late to investigate. "Whoa!" The huge silver wolf understood its master's order and immediately rushed towards the source of the stream. "Get in. We'll follow it." Zhang Qing didn't have time to think and immediately gestured for everyone to get on. As he'd thought of the road conditions beforehand, the caravan was built with a high chassis and shock-absorbing system. Even though the road was filled with strange rocks, it didn't pose much of a problem. 20 minutes later, they saw a scene they would never forget. On a huge cliff with magnificent grapevines hanging from it, countless humanoid creatures the size of a palm with transparent insect-like wings were plucking grapes endlessly. They threw them into grooves made of stone and crushed them before adding some unknown additives to ferment them. The grooves that finished fermenting would leave behind dark red wine. Tens of thousands of grooves would gather together to form that strange stream. Oh heavens, are they fairies? Or some kind of fairy? Jesse's eyes widened in shock. Ugh, I think it's better if we retreat a little. You have to understand that even bees can kill people. Who knows if they have any special abilities? Arabin's expression was wary. After all, even people without trypophobia would get goosebumps when they saw countless tiny bugs, let alone unknown creatures with the appearance of humans and wings of insects. From the fact that they knew how to make wine, it was obvious that their intelligence wasn't low. They might even have their own country and civilization. In fact, a fragmented world was just as its name suggested. It was a complete world, and it wasn't strange for it to give birth to new intelligent life and civilizations. However, these civilizations were too weak in front of the Parliament, heaven, and hell. Most of them were either completely destroyed or turned into slaves after being discovered. Only a few fragmented worlds that had developed to the extreme had the ability to forcefully seal off the entrance and prevent themselves from falling. Chapter 389. Not good. They've discovered us. Just as Zhang Cheng was considering whether he should try to make contact with them or use force to destroy them and extract their soul fragments, Patty suddenly shouted a warning. Instantly, the unknown humanoid creatures swooped down from the sky and surrounded the entire RV. Some of them even took out sharp blades that shone with silver light and pointed them at the giant silver wolf. There was no sign of fear on their faces at all. Jessie Livermore held the suitcase tightly as she swallowed her saliva and asked without turning her head, "Boss, what should we do now? Attack or run?" "Don't worry. Can't you see that they have no intention of attacking? Don't you know what this means?" Zhang Cheng did not show any signs of panic. He was still terrifyingly calm. This was because he had seen scarier scenes than Dobie. Tens of thousands of palm-sized humanoid creatures were not much of a threat. They want to negotiate. The corner of Jessie's mouth twitched as she said something that even she could not believe. To be exact, she was not born in the traditional underground world. She could not accept the fact that there were other intelligent beings in the world other than humans. Maybe. Anyway, I plan to observe these interesting little things from a close distance. After saying that, Zhangqing opened the door and walked out. The moment his feet touched the ground, two green little people rushed forward with toothpick-sized weapons in their hands. Each of them was less than a centimeter away from the eyeball. Due to their colored contact lenses, they did not notice that one of the eyes was emitting a dangerous green light. As long as the owner of the eye was willing, it could shoot out terrifying evil fire at any time. Asterisk and hashtag asterisk and dollar. A little person that looked like a leader flew forward and waved his arms as he roared angrily. Unfortunately, there was a language barrier between them. No matter how hard he tried, he could not make the giant in front of him understand what he meant. In the end, the little person could not help but choose to use force. He raised the scepter in his hand and shouted. In the blink of an eye, tens of thousands of tiny people launched their attacks. The toothpick-sized silver swords easily pierced through the silver wolf's tough fur. In Azeroth, even a steel sword would have a hard time cutting through the fur of an ordinary werewolf, let alone a life form that was more advanced than an ordinary werewolf. But now, these seemingly insignificant gadgets were not obstructed at all. They were either enchanted weapons or magical metals that had never been seen before. Ow! Feeling the pain, the giant wolf opened its bloody mouth and pounced on the nearest enemy. However, the enemy flapped its wings and dodged the attack. At this moment, not only did its huge body not bring any additional benefits, it had instead become a burden. At the same time, the two tiny dots hovering beside Zhangqing's eyes did not hesitate at all. They fiercely stabbed at his fragile pupils. Just as the sharp toothpick was about to touch the retina, a green flame suddenly spewed out from one of the eyes, burning them on the spot. Not even a speck of dust was left. But what was interesting was that the tiny toothpick did not melt under the dark flame. It only turned a little red and fell to the ground from the air. Oh, they didn't melt. Unbelievable. Zhangqing bent down and picked up one of the swords to examine it carefully. At the same time, he controlled the evil flames to spread in the air and kill a large number of humanoid life forms that tried to attack him. At the same time, he used the evil spells of the warlocks to continuously extract souls. In less than 5 minutes, thousands of soul fragments were piled up on the ground, forming a large purple sea. It had to be said that although these tiny creatures were small, the quality of their souls was not much different from that of humans, or even stronger. Asterisk and hashtag, asterisk yin and. Seeing his compatriots being killed in large numbers by the unreasonable green flames, the leader of the tiny creatures became even more furious and crazy. Under his command, hundreds of little blue people gathered together and began to solemnly chant an unknown incantation. In just a few minutes, the originally beautiful and dreamy sky was covered by a black cloud. Then, with a deafening roar, bolts of lightning fell from the sky and crackled. Seeing this, Zhangqing's eyes lit up with excitement. He pursed his lips and muttered to himself, "Interesting. It's a magic ritual. Although the power is a little weak, the method of resonance is quite worth studying." Asterisk bam. Asterisk just as he was in a daze, a bolt of lightning the size of a finger hit him directly in the chest. Fortunately, a preset protective rune was activated and blocked this attack that was enough to electrocute a person to death. Forget it. Now is not the time to do research. I'd better get rid of these strange little bugs first. After feeling the power of the lightning, Zhangqing quickly transferred his dark energy and turned it into a rain of fire, launching a destructive attack on the tiny creatures in front of him. One had to know that the fire rain he cast wasn't just a 10-meter radius like in the game, but an extremely large radius of more than 150 meters. Almost every time a scorching fireball fell, it would kill at least 3 to 5 palm-sized humanoid creatures. As for the tiny blue creatures that had gathered together to chant the spell, they were all burned to death before they could even scream. In the end, less than 200 humanoid creatures were left of the tens of thousands of them. They curled up under a glowing cliff and shivered. The leader from before had a bitter look on his face as if he had made a decision. He quickly flew through the coverage of the rain of fire and landed on the ground. He then crouched down and chanted a series of words that Harun did not understand. "What is this? Are you surrendering?" Zhangqing frowned uncertainly. Just as he was about to stop the rain of fire, he suddenly saw a red liquid appear on the top of the tiny creature's head and burrowed into the skin on the back of his hand. Soon, a bright red mark appeared on the back of his hand. Before he could figure out what was going on, he suddenly heard a weak and sorrowful voice in his ear. "O terrifying, powerful one, I am willing to offer my color in exchange for your mercy. Please let me and my people go." Color? Zhang Cheng keenly caught the keyword. He also realized that the owner of the voice was the tiny creature kneeling on the ground. Clearly, with the help of some kind of magic ritual, he could now understand what the other party was saying. Chapter 390. Color. Color is power, strong emotions, and the source of all life. Having color means having everything, and losing it means becoming a walking corpse. The strong take the color to control the weak, and the weak can only submit to the strong with a large amount of color. My name is Luke, and my people and I are forest elves. We are responsible for making delicious wine for the Fire Queen day and night. The little man with the scepter explained in a strange tone. Although every word that came out of his mouth was not in any language that Zhang Cheng knew, they formed an interesting phenomenon when put together. That was the transmission and understanding of thoughts. It was obvious that the two of them were not communicating through words, but through a very special magical effect. If he guessed correctly, it should be the red liquid that suddenly entered his skin. In that moment, he suddenly thought of many things. First, there was no doubt that there were many intelligent life, forms, and civilizations in this fragment world. However, they seemed to follow a strange law of survival, different from the humans on Earth or any other magical creatures that he knew of. Secondly, the color that the other person repeatedly mentioned seemed to be the source of the world's power and emotions. They would take each other's colors to strengthen themselves. Lastly, and most importantly, according to the experience of the Parliament, whenever a fragment world suspected of having a unique power system, it usually meant that there would be one or a few individuals that could pose a huge threat. If things were not handled well, they could cause the lords to suffer greatly. After understanding this point, Zhang Cheng immediately asked, "Who is the Fire Queen? Where does she live?" The Fire Queen is the strongest existence in the south. She is the flame that symbolizes life. She lives in the Fire Castle, which is less than 2 days' journey from here. The forest elf, who called himself Luke, quickly pointed out the direction. Zhang Cheng touched his chin with interest and turned to ask the others in the car, "Sounds interesting. I want to visit this Fire Queen. What do you think?" Urban Best shrugged nonchalantly. "You are the Lord. Naturally, you have the final say. By the way, we don't understand what you said to that little guy. Don't be anxious. Wait until I understand what is going on in this world, then I will tell you slowly. Right now, the most important thing was information. Only with enough information could they make the right judgment. As for those idiots who don't even have brains, I guarantee that they will die very quickly." After saying that, Zhang Cheng raised his hand and snapped his fingers. In an instant, the soaring evil flame engulfed all the surviving elves, including Ralyuk, without giving them any chance to resist or escape. As a lunatic who had personally planned the death of hundreds of thousands of people, he would not be foolish enough to let go of a group of intelligent beings who had a grudge against him, much less risk exposing his whereabouts. Who knew how many dangerous things there were in this world? Therefore, for the sake of safety, silencing them was the best choice. As for things like conscience and humanity, he would leave them to the Virgin Mary. Right now, he only wanted to survive by hook or by crook. He wanted to surpass one goal after another and finally find out who was hiding behind the parchment and manipulating him. As described in the poem, despicable was the passport of the despicable, and noble was the epitaph of the noble. Zhang Cheng would rather become a despicable person who used his passport than be engraved with a noble epitaph after death. After all, although the latter was engraved on the tombstone to praise the dead, it was actually for the living. To the dead, no matter how beautiful the words were or how glorious the achievements were, it was all meaningless. Only those who survived had the right to reverse the situation and change their fate in the future with all the forest fairies dead. The group roughly collected the toothpick swords that had fallen on the ground and quickly headed in the direction that Ralyuk had pointed out before his death. Along the way, they saw many bizarre life forms, such as the 3-meter-tall giant mushroom man, the sunflower with a rich expression like a human face, and the black fluffy ball that liked to tell dark jokes. In short, every time he killed one of them, Zhang Cheng would obtain some corresponding color. Over time, the back of his right hand had a colorful and bright color, and with just a thought, he could resonate with the magic energy that permeated the surrounding air. Feeling these strange colors converging together and gradually creating a power that was enough to affect space, he suddenly thought that if he wanted to seize the fragment world, he should try his best to obtain more colors. Only then could he sense the core that was hidden in an unknown place. It must be known that every fragment world had something called a core. Only by controlling it could one carry out limited environmental modifications. Some cores that had accumulated enough power could even create fresh life and give it a soul. This was something that even heaven and hell had to meet extremely stringent preconditions to be able to achieve. Just as Zhang Cheng half closed his eyes to explore the essence of colors, a huge fortress that was completely covered in flames suddenly rose from the horizon in front of him. Unlike ordinary fortresses made of stone, this fortress was made of scorching magma from head to toe. Even from 1,000 meters away, one could clearly see the flowing red liquid. What was puzzling was what kind of power allowed these high-temperature liquid rocks to maintain a stable appearance. Surrounded by flames, a beautiful woman wearing a fiery red backless dress and holding a huge ruby staff was sitting in the tower. Around her were countless fire elemental-like creatures that were constantly dancing happily. Coupled with her flame-like hair and eyes, it was no wonder that she was called the Queen of Flames. Out of caution, Zhang Cheng quickly signaled for the car to stop. Then he turned his head and said to Jessie, "Let the evil spirit in your suitcase explore the way. I suddenly have a bad premonition." Understood. Jessie did not try to refuse. He immediately patted the suitcase that was emitting a strong aura of death. In the blink of an eye, a cloud of black fog rose into the air and floated directly in the direction of the castle. Through the thick black fog, everyone could vaguely see a pale, twisted female face that was filled with evil and hatred. Without asking, it was obvious that this was a woman who had died tragically for some reason. In order to take revenge, she had willingly merged her soul and magic energy together, resisting the forced summoning of death. Chapter 391. Flying over 1,000 meters was nothing more than a blink of an eye for the evil spirit. However, just as the evil spirit's body entered the sky above the castle, the Flame Queen who was sitting in the tower suddenly raised her head and stared at the evil spirit with her burning eyes. The next second, boom, a terrifyingly hot fire pillar rose into the air and penetrated the black fog that the evil spirit used to hide its existence. An ear-piercing scream immediately echoed in the air above the castle. It was not an ordinary scream, but a sound wave attack formed by the death energy. If the evil spirit was strong enough, its scream alone would be enough to kill an ordinary person on the spot. If it was not strong enough, it could also cause a few strong men to fall into a deep coma. However, it was a pity that the scream only caused a few small fire creatures to disappear. It did not affect the Flame Queen at all. This beautiful woman, who seemed to be an elemental life form, raised her staff and waved it lightly. One of the towers in the castle quickly came to life and turned into a giant with hot lava flowing out of it. It raised its hand, which was the size of a house, and with a bang, it dispersed the evil spirit hidden in the thick black fog. After it was done, it quickly returned to its original state. If it was not for the strange, burnt smell of the luggage, perhaps everyone would think that it was an illusion. Damn it, Randall is heavily injured. I'm afraid it will take a few months for him to recover. Jessie Livermore was the first to recover from the shock. She hugged the luggage and cursed in a low voice, especially when the opponent could easily control the power of fire. It was simply the natural enemy of an undead controller like her. Sir, if you don't mind, I'm willing to give it a try. The battle maniac Urban Best took out the spell breaker and subconsciously licked his lips. No, let me go. Don't forget, I'm immune to fire damage. Besides, that woman is amazing. She's a worthy target. Bram Chalice was not to be outdone. He clenched his fists, and his eyes were filled with excitement and expectation. Seeing the eagerness of his subordinates, Zhang Cheng could not help but smile and wave his hand to refuse. No, now is not the time for us to make a move. Don't you guys realize that some people can't hold back anymore? As soon as he finished speaking, an arrow flashing with blue light made a whooshing sound and accurately pierced the Flame Queen's chest. The magic attached to the arrow began to release bone-chilling frost. In less than a minute, half of her body was completely frozen. Success. Go and kill her. Take her color. A man in camouflage clothing jumped down from the top of a huge mushroom and shouted at his companions hidden nearby. In his hand was a longbow engraved with the Ogan alphabet used by the ancient Celts. It looked like an antique from an unknown place, but the magic power it contained showed no signs of weakening. After all, the ancient Celts, who followed the path of druids, actually possessed many incredible magical powers. It was with the power of magic that they had defeated the Roman Empire's invasion many times. In particular, all kinds of wooden longbows would not decay even if they were buried underground for thousands of years. Winston, the other man, who was dressed like a Native American, quickly expanded and eventually turned into a half-human, half-jaguar. Without a doubt, he was the descendant of a jaguar warrior from the Aztec civilization. Through a series of complicated rituals, the Aztecs merged the soul of the jaguar into the body of their strongest warrior, giving them strength, speed, hearing, smell, and perception that surpassed the limits of humans. It was with the help of the jaguar warrior that they defeated one enemy after another and finally made the surrounding tribes submit to them. But it was a pity that the Aztec civilization was annihilated with the invasion of the European magical forces. Only a handful of traders survived and passed down this rare power to their descendants. Generally speaking, a jaguar warrior who had undergone strict training could easily defeat a dozen ordinary werewolves. Some could even compete with werewolf nobles if they used their strength to the extreme. But unfortunately, as soon as the jaguar warrior leaped over the boiling lava wall, he was hit by a huge fireball that fell from the sky. He screamed in agony, and in less than a few seconds, he was completely burned into a pile of unknown black substance. At the same time, the Flame Queen who had been frozen by the magic arrow was reborn like a phoenix. At this moment, her original human female appearance had completely disappeared. Instead, her entire body was covered in red scales, and there was a huge red crystal on her head. If one looked closely, they would notice that the crystal was exactly the same as the huge ruby on the staff. The great Red Queen shall grant you death. As the low, aria-like voice came out of her mouth, the Fire Queen suddenly raised her hands as if she was grabbing something. Before the few fellows who had jumped out could react to what was happening, their surroundings were suddenly covered in a terrifying red. In that moment, be it the sky, the ground, or the surrounding air, everything was an unimaginable red. Following that, the bodies of the unlucky ones who rushed out of their hiding places also began to turn red. In just a minute or so, they were completely assimilated by the red color. They could neither move nor speak, and could only wait for pairs of eyes filled with fear and despair. However, the Flame Queen had no intention of showing any mercy to them. With a gentle wave of her hand, All the people who were assimilated by the red color exploded at the same time, turning into red paint that splattered all over the place. No screams, no blood. It was not even known if that counted as death. In short, more than a dozen underworld residents with supernatural abilities, including a feudal lord, were mysteriously turned into a pile of red fuel. After they disappeared, the surroundings returned to normal. Wherever the red splattered, be it plants or stalagmites, they started to grow rapidly as if they had used Jinkala. Seeing such a strange scene, Zhang Cheng did not show the slightest bit of fear. Instead, he smiled and asked his two subordinates beside him, Bram, do you still want to try? My lord, I think we should wait a little longer. Her ability seems a little strange. Arabin hurriedly shook his head. Even though he liked to fight to his heart's content, it did not mean that he liked to die, especially when the target had a strange ability that he did not know about. Chapter 392. Just as Zhang Cheng sent his subordinates out to hunt down all kinds of life forms in the fragment world and seize the unknown substance named color, Catherine, the Desire Witch, was also listening to the information gathered by her allies in a world of ice and snow far away in the north. Lord Marat, who was in the form of a leopard man, was anxiously waving his whip-like tail while saying in a low voice, according to my observation, this fragment world seems to have a unique system, a power called color. All life forms born in this world will be given a variety of colors. These colors are not only the power, but also the most important part of the soul. If we want to seize this world, we must seize the color and find the core hidden somewhere. And we must act fast. Otherwise, it will be troublesome if someone else gets the first move. Seize the color? Sounds interesting. Then, how do you think we should seize it? Catherine held her chin and asked with great interest. As she was unlucky enough to draw the worst lot during the draw, she was the last lord to enter the fragment world, so she didn't know the specific situation of the fragment world for the time being. She could only obtain information from her allies before making the corresponding judgment. In short, there are two methods. One is to hunt down a large number of relatively weak creatures. The advantage is that it is relatively safe and won't lose too many people. The other is to hunt down those powerful life forms, such as the frost dragon that lives in the frozen peak. It is the most powerful monster that controls the white color. However, after some probing, I discovered that it had an extremely strange ability, and that was color assimilation. It could turn all living beings or objects into a white color. Most of the lords were unable to resist it and could only watch as they were killed. Similarly, if we take the risk to kill it, we can naturally seize this power. Morat quickly explained everything he knew. As one of the first few lords to enter, he had undoubtedly explored many places and even made an assessment of the degree of danger. He was very clear about the huge potential of this world. If it wasn't for the fact that there was no way to withdraw midway, he would have left without hesitation. But unfortunately, it was too late to withdraw now. The Parliament had already sealed the entrance and would only open it again in 2 days. So, the only thing he could do was to provide as much information as possible to the Desire Witch to ensure that he wouldn't survive this war of life and death. Oh, can it assimilate living people and turn them into paint? What amazing ability. Kars, what do you think? The corners of Catherine's mouth curled up, revealing a playful smile. The powerful witch doctor frowned and hesitated for a moment. Soon, he replied, Madam, I think it's very likely that the fragment world's core has mutated. Do you remember the affair of the Labyrinth of Pits in 1753? As the fragment world absorbed too much dark energy, it developed some kind of self-consciousness under the stimulation of the intruder. It will change its structure according to the situation and even create a huge maze that is constantly changing and never-ending. Do you mean that this fragment world also has self-awareness? Catherine's expression changed slightly. No, what I mean is it's best that we don't follow its rules. Otherwise, similar things might happen again. Kars lowered his voice and hinted. Okay, I think I understand. Let's do as you say and start a war to seize the colors. I believe that the treacherous Cain must be doing the same thing right now, right? As the last word escaped her mouth, Catherine stood up and raised her slender arms high. She shouted at the hundreds of ability users around her, people from the underground world of Brooklyn. Now, I order you to hunt down all the life you encounter and seize as many colors as you can. And I'll decide the reward after I become a member based on the number of colors you seize. Go kill, go seize, go vent your suppressed nature, and bring death and destruction to this world. Only desire is eternal. Kars raised his fist and was the first to respond. Only desire is eternal. Only desire is eternal. The rest of the people also felt the strong emotions of courage in their hearts and shouted crazily. Soon, these people who were affected by the witch's power spread out in groups of 3 to 5 and launched an inhumane massacre of a life in the fragment world. At the same time, in the west of the fragment world, Cain and his allies also gathered together to discuss countermeasures. Unlike the south, which was full of giant stalagmites and mushrooms, and the north, which was covered with white snow, the west was covered with large green swamps. Countless dangerous giant frogs, pythons, and big-headed fish with sharp teeth were hiding under the water. If one was not careful, they would be dragged into the water and become food for the terrifying monsters. In less than 2 to 3 hours, more than a quarter of the lords who were teleported here were killed. However, it was not that they did not gain anything. Almost everyone had an additional green spot on the back of their hands. Looking at the power vaguely revealed by the green spot, Cain suddenly turned around and asked Cassandra, "Do you feel this incredible power?" Cassandra replied without hesitation, "Of course. Green represents nature, the earth, and the birth of life. I can't believe that there is such pure vitality in these lowly life forms." Then what do you think we should do next? Continue to clean up the monsters in the swamp, or take the risk and try to kill the swamp behemoth directly? Cain probed with an uncertain tone. No, it's too dangerous to attack the swamp behemoth now. Continuing to seize more colors from the other monsters is the only way out. Don't forget, our enemy is not only the monsters, but also the desire which Catherine and her allies. Before the battle, we must preserve enough strength, Cassandra explained as she stroked her slightly protruding belly. Although she was at least a few months away from her due date, and theoretically it should not affect her combat ability, pregnancy was always a heavy burden for a woman. Cain nodded thoughtfully. If that's the case, then we'll kill all the life in this swamp, and then gather the colors we seize on you. Remember, you are our trump card. Don't make a move unless it's absolutely necessary. In less than 48 hours, the angels and demons will send messengers to join this game. I don't want to see them transform this world into a part of heaven or hell. Chapter 393. In the huge mushroom forest in the south of the fragment world, incomplete charred corpses could be seen everywhere. Among them were a large number of strange, unknown life forms, as well as many clearly intelligent humanoid life forms. Zhang Cheng, who had caused the savage scene, was sitting on a black, furball-shaped corpse, quietly looking at the back of his hand that had almost completely turned bright red. After a full minute, he suddenly opened his mouth and let out a strange syllable. Following that, the surrounding air started to become restless. In the blink of an eye, a large area of red covered a large area, including the corpses on the ground. When the syllables stopped, all the areas that were dyed red all turned into red liquid, and then slowly condensed into a crystalline solid state. Feeling the weak energy emitted by the red crystal, Zhang Cheng's lips curled up as he muttered to himself in a voice that only he could hear. So that's how it is. The so-called color is essentially an unknown magic energy. The more you obtain, the more powerful you can become. You can even use some powerful supernatural powers, at least under the rules of this fragment world. In addition, according to the different colors, the attributes of the energy are also different. The red I've collected so far symbolizes flames and intense emotions. When it accumulates to a certain extent, it will change from quantity to quality, becoming a half-elemental life form like that flame queen. It's no wonder that no matter if it's the Parliament, heaven, or hell, they all want to obtain more fragment worlds. After thousands of years of development, these world cores have become something that can make people go crazy. Anyone who obtains it will obtain unimaginable power in a short period of time. Even if they don't draw energy from it, they can use it to create powerful magic items or even divine equipment. Just as he finished speaking, he threw the huge red crystal in his hand behind his back. Asterisk boom. Asterisk, the soaring flames directly engulfed everything within a few hundred meters. The energy released by the red crystal in a short few seconds almost reached the effect of a great wizard Dalaran casting with all his strength. Of course, the red energy could only produce such a powerful destructive force in this fragment world. Once it left, it would become abnormally unstable and stable. However, right now, Zhang Cheng still needed to obtain more red points through killing to ensure that he would not be left behind by his competitors. Although he had prepared many trump cards, including the Crimson Meteorite in the Song of Ice and Fire world, it did not mean that he would use them at any time. If the situation was really bad to a certain extent, he would definitely choose to destroy the entire fragment world to ensure that he could complete the mission given by the parchment. As for how many people would die in the end and how the Parliament would react, that was not within the scope of his consideration. As someone who had personally experienced the indescribable power of the owner of the parchment, he did not doubt that the owner of the parchment could strip him of his knowledge and power. Before he became strong enough, the only thing he could do was to obey and complete every mission given on the sheepskin, even if he didn't know what the other party's goal was. Zhang Cheng, who was preoccupied with his thoughts, did not notice that a man in a black cloak had appeared out of thin air right after he left the huge mushroom forest filled with corpses. This fellow's entire body emitted an aura that was incompatible with the fragment world. He first bent down to examine the charred corpse that had been burned by the flames, then licked his lips and sighed. In less than 5 hours, he has already deciphered a completely unfamiliar law of power. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I'm afraid no one would believe it. No wonder the child of prophecy hired me to secretly observe. Perhaps. Before he finished speaking, a ball of golden light suddenly shone in the distant sky. At the same time, another ball of crimson light appeared in a completely opposite place. This mysterious man raised his head and stared at both sides of the sky for a long time. In the end, he sneered and mocked. You can't wait to come in before the appointed time? The bastards of heaven and hell are still as unruly as before. It doesn't matter. Even if I don't make a move this time, someone will give you a memorable lesson. The moment the last word came out of his mouth, his body emitted a large black shadow, and in the blink of an eye, he disappeared without a trace. About 20 minutes later, a blonde woman with golden eyes walked out from one end of the mushroom forest. She was completely naked and exuded an inviolable sacred aura. Even the most perverted guy would not have any physiological urges when he saw her. On the other side, a robust man walked out with a contemptuous, disdainful, and playful smile on his face. His two pale yellow pupils revealed an incomparable evil light. The two of them stared at each other for a long time before the woman bowed slightly and took the initiative to greet. Dear Barun, I didn't expect you to be the representative sent by hell this time. We haven't seen each other for about 400 years, and you still haven't been promoted? Oomph. Save your tedious words, Shamir. As a low-level female angel, you can climb so fast. Don't tell me you provided some special service to your superior. You must know that in the human world, many ambitious women like to do this. After all, they can experience extreme happiness and get additional benefits. Who would refuse? The man teased, not to be outdone. Obviously, not only did the two of them know each other, they even understood each other very well. Perhaps ordinary people would never have thought that an angel who was regarded as a symbol of good and a demon who was regarded as a symbol of evil would not break out into a fierce battle after meeting. Instead, they calmly mocked each other. Sorry to disappoint you. We of heaven are different from you demons who crawl out of the filthy hell and do whatever you want. Every promotion must have a corresponding merit. In addition, I want to know what you plan to do this time. Do you want to decide the winner between us first, or join hands to deal with the minions of the council first. The woman called Shamir stared at Borun with two majestic eyes and probed. You are still as direct as before. Although I want to settle the grudges between us first, there are more important things to deal with, so I choose the latter. Borun gave a meaningful answer. Oh, can you tell me what is so important? Shamir raised her eyebrows in surprise. Ha ha, no, I won't tell the secret in my heart to my enemy. Borun laughed and opened his arms, his whole body emitting crimson flames. Chapter 394. As a demon of hell born from the desires of mortals, Borun had lived for nearly 1,000 years. Excluding the first 200 years of hard labor under the greedy monarchs, he had spent the rest of his time desperately trying to increase his influence among ordinary people. This was especially so in a modern metropolis like New York, which had just been established not long ago and had yet to form a religious monopoly. Coupled with the dark side of human nature mixed with money, power, and desire, New York was simply the best place for demons to harvest souls. Most ordinary people had complex personalities. They might be crazily slaughtering for benefits 1 second, but the next second, they would suddenly wake up and sacrifice their lives for some ridiculous reasons. Regardless, Borun liked to hide in the shadows and enjoy the tragedies of the human world. Sometimes, he would even personally participate in them, playing 1 or 2 insignificant roles. If there were no accidents, with the capital that it had accumulated over the years, it would not take long for it to obtain a territory in hell and establish its own domain. It might even be able to make use of the natural worship that mortals had for supernatural powers to secretly establish a huge church organization, allowing its name to spread with the convenience of the internet. Perhaps after a few hundred years, he might even be able to stand on equal footing with the great demons who had survived the ancient war, or even surpass them. Unfortunately, all of this had been destroyed by a human magus who had appeared out of nowhere. Not only did the other party completely expel his consciousness, but he had also destroyed the underground church and its tentacles that he had painstakingly established. Having lost the backbone that he had cultivated for generations, it would be impossible for him to establish a similar evil organization without at least 10 or 20 years of effort. It was precisely because of this that Borun had paid a huge price in exchange for the opportunity to participate in seizing the fragment world. He knew that as long as he caught the young magus and figured out the source of the mysterious power he used, he would be able to obtain something more precious than souls. He could also force the young magus to sign a contract and become a powerful ally. Apart from that, seizing a fragment world was also a great achievement for the forces of hell. Perhaps the great monarchs would be happy and reward him with the core of this world. Borun's ferocious face couldn't help but reveal an excited smile at the thought of obtaining unimaginable benefits by paying a small price. Not long after, he found traces of Zhang Cheng. To be precise, it was a few warm corpses that had just been killed. Oh, my prey has appeared. Slaughter. Destruction. What a wonderful aura. Even if I haven't seen your soul for the time being, I can guarantee that it must be emitting the deepest aura of darkness. The demon descended from the sky and exclaimed while holding one of the monster's corpses. But after a short while, he flapped his wings again and flew past the stalagmites at an extremely fast speed, heading toward the source of the loud noise. At the same time, Zhangcheng was so focused on hunting a reptile covered in hard granite that he didn't notice the danger at all. Although he had countless ways to instantly crush this behemoth, he only used the hand that had completely turned red. Through battle after battle, he slowly familiarized himself with the rules of this world. After all, in Zhangcheng's eyes, every supernatural power system had something worth learning and referencing. What he needed to do was to find the parts that he could use and then slowly accumulate them to form a process from quantitative change to qualitative change. Seizing color may sound like a child's play on the surface, but contained a very terrifying thing, and that was the universal use of energy. As everyone knew, any magical energy system would have slight changes depending on the user. For example, if both were Dalaran mages, One person's magic power could not be used with another person's magic power, unless it was a special constant source of magic power, like the Well of Eternity or the Sunwell. Otherwise, the slightest fluctuation of the two types of energy would cause irreparable, catastrophic consequences. Even if Illidan taught the blood elves the technique of extracting dark energy, it was not completely without cost. At least, the distortion of their minds and personalities was obvious to all. But the power of the so-called color in this fragment world had no hindrance at all. After seizing it from a creature, it could be used immediately. Just like EXP in many games, there was no need to pay any price. Just for this point alone, it was very worthy of in-depth study. If he could figure out the mystery, Zhang Cheng could break the shackles of his power, being greatly weakened every time he entered a new world. Woo! The huge reptile that looked like a large pangolin let out a low growl, as if it had realized that it could not defeat this enemy that was countless times smaller than itself, with just its claws and teeth. It suddenly opened its dark green eyes and shot out a strange ray of light. Damn it! Zhang Cheng, who had noticed the strong energy fluctuation, had no time to dodge and immediately activated a hidden arcane protective rune. Instantly, the blinding light hit the arcane rune and let out an incredible sound. Asterisk boom. Asterisk for a moment. A large amount of dust and gravel flew everywhere. When the thick dust gradually dissipated, the arcane rune had changed from a pure energy state into a heavy stone. There was no doubt that the light that shot out of the monster's eyes was none other than a terrifying, petrifying light. No wonder there were so many strange rocks around the stalagmite. It was not a natural phenomenon after a long period of weathering, but the unlucky ones that were petrified by the monster at the thought that he had almost become one of them. Zhang Cheng's mouth could not help but twitch as he quickly touched the alchemy stone on his finger. In the blink of an eye, the monster's position began to emit a terrifying heat wave. The next second, asterisk bam, asterisk hot magma spewed out from the ground. It directly swallowed the unknown monster, especially the thick rocks on its body. Not only did it not provide any protection, but it sank deeper into the red magma, and the more it struggled, the deeper it sank until it was finally cooked alive. The moment it died, a large blob of brown liquid slowly rose into the air. Chapter 395. A Demon. After seeing the face of the intruder, Zhang Cheng's pupils suddenly shrank, and he immediately entered the highest state of alert. Not only were all the protective runes in the activated state, but he also took out Jordan's staff from his magic waist pouch. Although with his current strength, he did not have to worry about the attack of ordinary demons, he still took the most cautious measures. After all, the degree of danger between demons could not be distinguished from their appearance. You would never know whether the demon that suddenly appeared was a coolie in charge of running errands or the disguise of a great demon. A demon? No, think about it carefully. Friendly reminder, we've met before. Borun calmly folded his wings with a mocking expression on his face. It was obvious that his understanding of Zhang Cheng's spellcasting ability was still limited to the past. To be precise, it was not too long ago according to the time of this world. Therefore, he did not know that the once weak mage had already undergone earth-shattering changes. Met before, Zhang Cheng subconsciously frowned and pondered for a moment. After about 2 or 3 seconds, he reacted and asked in surprise, "You are Boric? The guy who made the demon baby for the werewolves?" The demon grinned and nodded. "That's right. It's me. You didn't expect me to get permission from the Parliament and appear in front of you so quickly, right? No. It's nothing to be surprised about. What really makes me curious is how you could sneak into this fragment world before the stipulated time. Does Hell want to tear up the agreement signed with the Parliament?" Zhang Cheng pretended to be curious and continued to probe. After all, the entrance to the fragment world was right under the nose of the European Parliament. Unless someone secretly played tricks, even the demon lord might not be able to break in, let alone a mere demon. Obviously, either someone wanted the lords of Brooklyn to be wiped out, or the guy in charge of this matter in the European Parliament had secretly reached some kind of agreement with the demons and used his power to open a door for them. Either way, It meant that the danger of this game had skyrocketed. Uh-huh. Your sense of smell is very sharp. You actually noticed the little secret hidden behind me less than a minute after I appeared. That's right. Someone very powerful opened a small back door for me. It wasn't just me. The emissary from heaven had also arrived. Guess what he wants us to do? While fiddling with his sharp claws, Borun soaked his body below his knees in the lava. As a demon, what he liked the most was to soak himself in boiling magma and feel the heat from the depths of the Earth's core. Zhang Cheng nodded thoughtfully. I see. Someone has betrayed the council. No. He didn't betray the council. He only betrayed you. Who could resist the temptation of a complete fragmented world? This powerful guy hopes that before his men come in, all of you will be severely injured. It would be great if all of you died. This way, he can monopolize the entire fragment world. After that, Borun's ferocious face showed an indescribable expression of mockery. Who is he? Also, according to the nature of demons who generally like to play tricks, you shouldn't play according to his script until the end, right? Without a doubt, Zhang Cheng was not frightened by the huge conspiracy revealed in the demon's words. To be precise, from the moment he entered, he had prepared for the worst, so no matter what happened, he would not panic. After all, the mission given by the parchment this time was a trial. Since it was a trial, it was necessary to fully test his strength and the knowledge in his mind. Right now, he had not even used 1/20th of his strength. Sorry, I can't say his name yet, but you are right. I don't intend to play according to his script until the end. Now tell me, will you obediently hand over what I want and live as my believer? Or will I kill you and extract your soul and slowly torture you? Remember, you only have one chance to choose. If you make the wrong choice, the consequences will be disastrous. The demon glared at him with 2 yellowed eyes and threatened. You seem to be very confident in defeating me? The corners of Zhang Cheng's mouth rose slightly, and he took out a book emitting a strong, evil aura. Borun subconsciously glanced at it, and after confirming that it was not a powerful magic item bestowed to mortals by the demon monarchs, he immediately shrugged his shoulders indifferently. Of course, do you think that with your pitiful spell-casting ability, it is enough to threaten a powerful demon like me? Sigh, you are really arrogant. Forget it. I will let you know how insignificant you are now. Moreover, my laboratory is looking forward to having a living demon as an experiment material. As the last word left his mouth, Zhang Cheng directly injected the thousands of soul fragments stored in his magic pouch into the demon commanding codex. In the blink of an eye, a Doom Guardian wearing magic armor and holding a 2-handed enchanted greatsword appeared out of thin air. Although its body was still a little shaky because it had just been resurrected, it did not take long for it to completely stabilize. Boric, kill him. Without any hesitation, Zhang Cheng immediately gave the order to attack. As you wish, great master. Without another word, the Doom Guardian raised its hand and fired a shadow arrow. Immediately after, green, evil energy flames instantly surrounded its body, and its huge body soared into the air, ruthlessly slashing down at the enemy. Damn it, you can actually summon and control demons? The frightened Borun hurriedly raised his claws to block the sharp blade falling from the sky. Although he had never seen a similar form in hell, the chaos, brutality, anger, and evil negative emotions emanating from Boric's body could not be faked. Oomph. Don't worry, my friend. The show has just begun. Zhang Cheng responded with a sneer, and he began to continuously resurrect the Burning Legion's minions whose souls were imprisoned in the Demon Commanding Codex. Using demons to deal with demons. Was there a more interesting scene in the world? Coupled with the large number of soul fragments he had accumulated from the previous massacre, he could completely summon a small army. In just a few minutes, demons were resurrected one after another, especially the Hellfire puppets made entirely of evil energy flames. They were simply killing machines born for war.